Chapter 289. Li Tianlan still didn't know where Qin Weibai was. He wasn't even sure if what the mirage reflected in front of him was the real scene, and how far it was from him. The illusory mirage began to disappear. The cloud-like figure gradually dimmed. Li Tianlan returned to the deck. He watched everything disappear in front of him, but there was nothing he could do. The sky cleared up after the rain. The rainbow in the sky became clearer. All the sailors and the captain of the cargo ship respected Li Tianlan like a god. It was no secret that there were 4 realms of martial arts and absolute masters in the world. But how many people had seen a force that was close to the power of heaven to set off a 1,000-meter-high wave in the vast deep sea with his own power? Under everyone's careful service, the cargo ship gradually sailed out of the Pacific Ocean and into the Yellow Sea. In the following days, Li Tianlan never left the deck. He kept looking at the direction where the mirage disappeared. But the sea was no longer gloomy, and there was no heavy rain. Naturally, there was no mirage that he had been longing for. In the middle of June, the cargo ship entered Dongshan province of Zhongzhou State. It docked at Qingdao in the evening. The sound of water faded away. Li Tianlan walked out of the dock with Golden Retriever. The hustle and bustle of Zhongzhou State came to him in an instant. The wind and snow in the polar region were dissipating. The mirage was dissolving. The sword and tent began to fall silent. Li Tianlan's eyes were in a trance. He looked at Zhongzhou State, which he had left for 3 years, as if a lifetime had passed. "It's good that you're back." A voice suddenly sounded in front of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan came to his senses. Without a sound, a figure in black had already appeared in front of him. Black casual clothes, black casual pants, casual leather shoes, short hair, and a pale but slightly delicate face. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched and he said, "Martial uncle, you're really becoming more and more modern." Tribulation's appearance was far younger than his actual age. He looked like a young man less than 30 years old. Now his outfit made him look a few years younger. Li Tianlan remembered the black robe and silver mask when he first met Tribulation. The unparalleled shadow formula, the forceful and domineering stop formula, and the sharp and cold kill formula. At that time, Tribulation was a mysterious and powerful death hidden under the black robe and silver mask. But now, although it was not the first time he had seen such a Tribulation, he still couldn't accept it. Sai City no longer needs to hide behind snow mountains and masks. Tribulation's tone was indifferent. It's meaningless. Li Tianlan fell silent. Sai City had always stood aloof from worldly affairs. Every top assassin wore a mask and rarely competed with other forces in the country for any resources. They just lived quietly on the snow-covered mountain top under the mask. But as he became the young governor of Sai City, everything would change completely. Tribulation coughed softly and wiped the corner of his mouth with his fingers calmly. Li Tianlan vaguely saw a trace of red. His heart suddenly sank. Looking at Tribulation's pale face, he asked, "The jade seal is useless?" "It works." Tribulation glanced at him, waved his hand and said, "Let's talk in the car." From Sai City to Zither Island, Tribulation came to pick up Li Tianlan alone, without even bringing a driver. Li Tianlan put the Golden Retriever in the back seat and sat in the passenger seat. Looking at Tribulation's pale face, he asked in a deep voice, "Martial uncle, what's going on?" Tribulation went straight into the invincible realm in Heaven Capital. It had been 3 years now. He couldn't imagine how serious the injury was that Tribulation hadn't fully recovered in 3 years under the influence of the Imperial Jade Seal's massive luck. "I'm much better than before you left." Tribulation drove away from the dock and said calmly, "But the injury was so severe that the luck in the Jade Seal could only slowly neutralize my injury. Unless I can make a big breakthrough and start over like you, I can only endure it." He paused and laughed at himself. "At my age, how can I have the qualification to start over?" Li Tianlan looked at Tribulation seriously. Tribulation was the strongest assassin in the dark world. Now that his injury had recovered a little and his breath was restrained, Li Tianlan couldn't see any clue. "So now," he asked softly, "Invincible realm." There was no expression on Tribulation's face. "It's almost the same as before the breakthrough. I'm injured and can only exert about half of my strength, but I should not be worse than Gu Qianchuan." Gu Qianchuan was the first elder of Kunlun City, and was not worse than him. It sounded good, but he was the most amazing assassin in the dark world. It was not bad that he had recovered to this extent, but it was definitely not good news. What about you? Tribulation handed Li Tianlan a cigarette and suddenly asked, in 3 years, how is the recovery from Huading to the polar region, which is tens of thousands of miles? Li Tianlan took the cigarette and lit it. He took a deep breath, feeling the long-lost taste of tobacco and the dizziness in his brain. He thought about it carefully and said softly, still outside the invincible realm. His martial arts had no 4 realms of martial arts, only sword intent. Sword intent was not invincible, which meant he was outside the invincible realm. Without a life-and-death fight, Li Tianlan didn't know what his current combat strength was. Tribulation took a deep look at him and said softly, let's go back first. Li Tianlan hesitated for 2 or 3 seconds and finally shook his head. He whispered, Martial uncle, I won't go to Mount Tai. Tribulation subconsciously slowed down the car. He went to see Li Tianlan. As a result, the golden retriever in the back row rushed over and blocked Li Tianlan's expression with a huge dog head. Why? Tribulation asked. Li Tianlan didn't speak. It was not that he didn't like Mount Tai, but Situt Songyue gave him a very complicated feeling. The hidden god of Zhongzhou State did not have any malice, but in Li Tianlan's feeling, the other party's kindness did not seem to be for him, or even for the Li family. 3 years ago, he saw Situt Songyue on Mount Tai. Situt Songyue looked at him as if she was looking at another person. Li Tianlan knew who she was looking at. But he didn't like this feeling and didn't know how to face that kind of gaze. My sister has been collecting news about Snow Country and the polar region in recent years. Although she didn't say it, she secretly went to Snow Country once, but she didn't find you. There are not many people in Sai City, but you haven't met all of them. Everyone wants to see how the young governor is after the great victory. Secretary Bai went to Mount Tai almost every month to ask about you in recent years. She cried every time. She was very sad. I never knew that the strong woman in politics could be so fragile. Li Tianlan knew that Tribulation was talking about Bai Qingqian, Dongqing Wudi's wife. Li Tianlan had never thought of her for 3 years. They only met once and didn't talk much. He thought he should have forgotten her long ago. But now when he heard Tribulation mention her again, Li Tianlan had a feeling that he couldn't breathe. That feeling was not oppressive, but strange. Go to Luojing Zhongyuan. Li Tianlan interrupted Tribulation and said in a low voice. Tribulation said no more and drove in another direction in silence. At the same time, he changed the topic and said, Dongqing Wudi has been promoted. In the years you were away, the relationship between the academics and the giant group was not affected. He went to Yuzhou last year. The army headquarters? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. The Border Control Corps had a saying in Zhongzhou State that the Border Control Corps was a small army headquarters. The commander of the Border Control Corps went to the capital and competed for the position of the army headquarters. If he went to any other place, it could be said that he was promoted in public, but demoted in private. Tribulation said. He took over Qi Baitsong's position. Qi Baitsong retired last year. Li Tianlan said. He knew Qi Baitsong, the flag figure of the Special Warfare Group. In the past few years, he had been the backbone to check and balance President Li Huaqing's military power. He retired so smoothly that Dongqing Wudi became the nominal number 2 in the military of Zhongzhou State, but actually the number 1 in the military. This was somewhat unexpected. As Dongqing Wudi changed from a member of the decision-making committee to a director, and became a real giant, the giant group's right to speak in Zhongzhou State would be greatly enhanced. In this matter, the Wang family of Beihai also contributed. The Dongqing clan never made a losing deal. In the border war 3 years ago, the Border Control Corps penetrated 800 miles into the territory of Annan State. That land, together with the elites of the Border Control Corps, was handed over by the Dongqing clan to the Wang family of Beihai in exchange for the support of the Wang family of Beihai to Dongqing Wudi. Now the situation in Zhongzhou State is a bit chaotic. You came back at the right time. Li Tianlan silently thought about the impact of the change at the top level on him and suddenly said, Who will take over the Border Control Corps? For the time being, Dongqing Wudi is the commander of the army. The position is a bit difficult to produce. As for who will be in charge, it depends on the next transaction of the major groups. Tribulation's tone was indifferent, but his words were enough to make Li Tianlan realize the great changes that had happened and were about to happen in Zhongzhou State. He narrowed his eyes and said no more. It was night when they got off the boat from Qin Island. When they arrived at Luojing, it was close to midnight. Although Tribulation had informed the Dongqing clan in advance, when the car drove to the mountain occupied by the Dongqing clan, Tribulation and Li Tianlan couldn't help but be a little surprised. Before going up the mountain road, Dongqing Hongguang, the old patriarch of the Dongqing clan, was standing there with his butler, motionless. No one knew how long they had been waiting. Tribulation was surprised. Li Tianlan felt ridiculous, and even a little scared. He didn't think he was qualified to let the spiritual leader of the giant group wait for him at the foot of the mountain overnight. Old Master. Li Tianlan quickly got out of the car and held Dongqing Hongguang's hand with both hands. The Dongqing clan really couldn't find any fault with him. Li Tianlan was moved and had nothing to say for a while. Son, it's good that you're back. Wudi was going to come back, but there was a temporary meeting. When he came, it would be dawn. Dongqing Hongguang smiled and patted Li Tianlan's palm. His eyes were a little tired, but full of kindness. Rushi is already on the way. You came faster than I thought. Thank you. Li Tianlan looked at Dongqing Hongguang and said in a dry voice. Thank you. Don't say it too early. Dongqing Hongguang smiled and said, there is a bigger surprise to come. He looked at Tribulation standing beside Li Tianlan and said with a smile, Your Highness, you've worked hard. Tribulation shook his head. He was in the invincible realm, but in front of Li Tianlan, he was only willing to be a deputy governor standing beside the young governor. Old Master, do you mean that the thing that the Dongqing clan has been researching in recent years has been successful? Tribulation asked. Dongqing Hongguang laughed and said, 2 months ago it was successfully completed. Tianlan, you came back just in time. 3 years ago, Senior Li sent the murderous weapon, the Legend of Qin, and you asked Wudi to send the fragments of the Li family's murderous weapon. Today I give you a real murderous weapon. It may not be the strongest, but it's definitely the most suitable for you. Li Tianlan's eyes lit up. A new weapon. This was the main purpose of his coming to Zhongyuan. Where is it? He asked subconsciously. Not here. Dongqing Hongguang smiled and said, in the secret laboratory in Spirit Treasure City. I'll take you there now. But Tianlan, the person who used the Legend of Qin to create a new murderous weapon is my nephew. His lifelong wish is to create a real murderous weapon. The previous Mad Strike and Sky Attack were made by him, but they were far less powerful than the murderous weapon. Until he saw the Legend of Qin this time, he simply devoted all his attention to it. In 3 years he was too ashamed to say that he created a new murderous weapon. But now the one in Spirit Treasure City has indeed replaced the Legend of Qin. So, he hesitated and said, he wants to name your weapon. It was definitely an honor in the dark world to name a murderous weapon that could be handed down for hundreds of thousands of years. No problem. It's a small matter. Li Tianlan answered without hesitation. He didn't care about the name of the weapon at all. The human emperor of divine punishment sounded domineering, but in fact, he didn't mind even if it was called grass or wildflower. If it's a small matter, Tianlan, how about you promise me something big? Dongqing Hongguang glanced at Li Tianlan and said with a chuckle. Li Tianlan's heart sank. Thinking of the engagement, he coughed and said, what do you want me to promise? It's not what you're worried about. Dongqing Hongguang laughed and scolded. He did want to mention it, but after hearing Li Tianlan's words, he simply changed the topic and said, I couldn't find you in the past few years. Now that you're here, how about you come back this Mid-Autumn Festival, and spend the Mid-Autumn Festival together? The Mid-Autumn Festival was the day of reunion. The old man had been longing for the real reunion for many years. Li Tianlan hesitated a little, and then shook his head. Dongqing Hongguang's eyes were dim and puzzled. If Li Tianlan didn't come back, then Bai Qingqian, who hadn't come back for many years, wouldn't come back either. How could they reunite? Why? Dongqing Hongguang asked softly. Old master. Li Tianlan gave a wry smile and shook his head, saying, The Mid-Autumn Festival and New Year's Eve have nothing to do with me since I was born. In the place where I live, the Li family doesn't celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival. The Mid-Autumn Festival, New Year's Eve, and the Lantern Festival. These traditional festivals had nothing to do with the Li family as long as Li Tianlan could remember. For ordinary people, it might be very festive. But for the Li family, such festivals were only painful. So the Li family never celebrated the Mid-Autumn Festival. It was just New Year's Eve. Chapter 290. As the leading military tycoon in Zhongzhou State, the Dongqing clan established or indirectly controlled military groups all over Zhongzhou State. But only those who really knew the inside story knew that the essence of the Dongqing clan was their own secret research and laboratories. In the past 2 decades, the Dongqing clan had introduced 5 new technologies, each of which caused a huge sensation. 17 years ago, the intercontinental long-range missile codenamed Aurora had been developed to the 3rd generation, and it was still the main missile of Zhongzhou State. 14 years ago, the Black Dragon Army, a subordinate of the Border Praetorian Corps, was equipped with the Great Wall defense system of the Dongqing clan. It was upgraded a few times and was still working perfectly. 12 years ago, the individual combat weapon Mad Strike that could be mass-produced came out. 8 years ago, after careful consideration, Zhongzhou State finally gave a small number of precious materials to the Dongqing clan at a great cost. In less than 3 years, the Dongqing clan proved its top-notch technology in the field of individual combat armor. In 3 years, the military allocated funds 6 times, and the Dongqing clan made a total of 4 armors. They were Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. 4 Spirits armor, which was now famous throughout the Dark World. 5 years ago, the Dongqing clan began to develop an upgraded version of Mad Strike. So in the Battle of Heaven Capital 3 years ago, Li Tianlan got the first finished product developed by the Dongqing clan. A gun that could threaten a thundershocking realm expert. The most important thing was mass production. It was a magical word. This was the Dongqing clan. A clan that flashed with wisdom and technology in the bloody slaughter. It was powerful, huge, deep-rooted, and full of talents. Few people knew where the most essential and hidden weapon laboratory of the Dongqing clan was. Most people could only guess that it was in Zhongzhou, but they didn't even know the general direction. But Dongqing Hongguang really trusted Li Tianlan 100%. On the way to Spirit Treasure City, even Tribulation was lucky enough to go with him. How important was the laboratory that could experiment and successfully transform murderous weapons? Even on the way, Li Tianlan could clearly feel the weight behind Dongqing Hongguang's trust. The vehicle was driving on the highway in the night. Dongqing Hongguang, who was sitting with Li Tianlan, patted Li Tianlan's palm and whispered, Our laboratory in Spirit Treasure City is the Metal Laboratory, which is also the one hidden deep. The murderous weapons material is special, so it needs to be activated there. My nephew, you should call him Uncle, got a lot of inspiration in the process of transforming murderous weapons. Now he is over there studying the new generation of alloy technology in Zhongzhou State. I don't know much about it, but it is said that if there is a breakthrough in that technology, the defense of the active armored tanks in Zhongzhou State will be doubled. Today you guys should get to know each other. In the future, if you need any weapons, you can look for Wudi to get the approval, and then get Wujin to make them for you. We're family, so don't stand on ceremony. Li Tianlan nodded, not knowing what to say. Your Highness, if Sai City needs anything, the Dongqing clan is willing to do our best. Dongqing Hongguang looked at Tribulation, who was sitting in the passenger seat, and said slowly, Thank you. Tribulation nodded, but he sighed in his heart. This was probably old Master Dongqing's love for Li Tianlan. The distance between Luojing and Spirit Treasure was not far. Uncle En, the butler of the Dongqing clan, drove the car. After entering Spirit Treasure City, they continued to move forward, went out of Hanggu Pass, and finally stopped in a manor less than 2 kilometers away from Hanggu Pass. Li Tianlan, who felt a little uncomfortable, was the first to get out of the car. There was a breeze blowing in the field. Li Tianlan, who had sweat on his body, felt clear-headed. He turned his eyes to the manor. At the gate of the manor, a red sports car was parked there. A tall and slim girl stood by the car and looked at Li Tianlan quietly. Li Tianlan froze for a moment and opened his mouth. He didn't expect to see Dongqing Rushi at first sight after getting out of the car. Dongqing Rushi, who seemed to have been waiting here for a while, walked over gently. The early summer night was a little cool. Dongqing Rushi was dressed more casually. A white off-the-shoulder short-sleeved t-shirt. He wore a pair of blue denim shorts. The shorts were very short. A pair of snow-white, slender, and long legs were exposed. The dark-colored stilettos made a crisp sound as they clicked on the ground. Dongqing Rushi walked up to Li Tianlan and looked into his eyes seriously. Her body was very fragrant. A clear and gentle fragrance with a kind of soft taste. Li Tianlan's eyes fell from her face to her snow-white shoulders, and then to her slender and straight legs. The night wind blew up Dongqing Rushi's hair. Her eyes were clear and quiet. She was his fiancée. An idea suddenly came to Li Tianlan's mind. After 3 years, Dongqing Rushi was still beautiful, but there was a hint of fashionable arrogance in her. Li Tianlan was a little dazzled. He coughed and pointed to the gate of the manor as naturally as possible. "Why don't you go in? I don't have the authority." Dongqing Rushi blinked and looked at Li Tianlan's face seriously. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Li Tianlan nodded. They were not familiar with each other before. They hadn't seen each other for 3 years, and now it was really awkward. He touched his nose and braced himself to talk awkwardly. Dongqing Rushi had already opened her arms. "Hug me." Her voice was soft, and she looked at Li Tianlan with a little caution. Li Tianlan had a headache. In his sight he saw Uncle An, the butler of the Dongqing clan, walking to the gate of the manor. Tribulation and Dongqing Hanguang, who had gotten out of the car, stood together. Tribulation was looking at the scenery in the night. Dongqing Hanguang's eyes had already turned over. Li Tianlan saw that the old man was looking at him and Dongqing Rushi. His eyes were full of expectation. This kind of emotion was so strong that it even seemed to be a little pleading. Li Tianlan's heart suddenly twitched. At this moment he really realized that in this engagement, he had reached the point of no retreat. Dongqing Rushi opened her hands in front of him, and her eyes were so careful. Li Tianlan took a step forward and held Dongqing Rushi in his arms. It was very light, very soft, very fragrant. Dongqing Rushi put her arms around Li Tianlan's waist. Her little face gently rubbed Li Tianlan's chin and she whispered, "I missed you so much." Li Tianlan had a complicated feeling in his heart. From an angle that he couldn't see, Dongqing Rushi's eyes were also complicated and confused. It had been 3 years. She didn't know whether she missed Li Tianlan or not, just like she opened her hands in front of Li Tianlan, but she wasn't sure if she really wanted him to hug her. She only knew that if she did this, Grandpa would be very happy, and so would her father and mother. That was enough. Nothing else mattered at all. She didn't think there was anything unacceptable about Li Tianlan. Not at all. Because she had received too much since she was a child. Music, dance, poetry, painting, calligraphy, massage, embroidery, cooking she had been learning since she was a child. Because this was something that Li Tianlan might like. Martial arts, finance, politics, power play, psychology, interpersonal relations. She had also been learning since she was a child. Because this was something that could help Li Tianlan. She had known Li Tianlan's existence since she was a child. From the time she could remember, countless people had told her that her future husband was Li Tianlan. This name was like an instinctive curse that had long been deeply engraved in her bones. Even many times, Dongqing Rushi felt that she was not Dongqing Rushi. In this world, her only identity seemed to be Li Tianlan's fiancé. It really didn't matter whether she liked him or not. She had to stand with him. Only in this way could Dongqing Rushi feel the meaning of her existence. Uncle An's figure was stopped at the gate of the manor. Several middle-aged men who looked very ordinary appeared at the gate with extremely restrained aura. Uncle An did the registration meticulously and keyed in 3 passwords on the door before the door slowly opened to both sides. A middle-aged man who looked a little dull and old-fashioned seemed to have gotten the news and quickly walked out of the gate. He was the first to walk to Dongqing Hanguang. This seemed to be a middle-aged man who rarely showed his expression. Looking at Dongqing Hongguang, he forced an uncomfortable smile on his stiff face. He bowed meticulously and said, "Uncle." Dongqing Hongguang nodded and pointed to Tribulation beside him. "This is His Highness Situ Wanjie of Sai City." The middle-aged man acted as if he had never heard of this name. He made two random sounds and turned to look at Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi, who were hugging each other. He walked over quickly. The footsteps awakened Dongqing Rushi, who was a little confused. She straightened up from Li Tianlan's arms and looked at the middle-aged man coming over. She said in a clear voice, "This is Uncle." Before Li Tianlan could react, the middle-aged man had introduced himself. "I'm Dongqing Wujin." Dongqing Wujin didn't know many people in the Dark World. But many people in the Dark World knew him. He was the honorary dean of the Academy of Military Sciences of Zhongzhou State, a senior academician, a doctor of metallography, precision mechanics, and physics. He was one of the pioneers in the field of weapon research in Zhongzhou State, and the soul of all the secret weapon laboratories of the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Wujin's figure was thin. Standing in front of Li Tianlan, he only gave him the feeling that he was not talkative and dull. Li Tianlan couldn't call him uncle. He could only vaguely call him Dean. Dongqing Wujin didn't mind. He just said with a dull face, "Your weapon is behind you." He reached out and pointed. Inside the manor, a young man with glasses ran out with a silver suitcase. Everyone stared at the suitcase in his hand. Dongqing Wujin's face was still dull, but his eyes gradually became hot. The silver suitcase was not big, but it contained the highest achievement of his life. The new murderous weapon of the Dark World. Dongqing Wujin took the suitcase. In Li Tianlan's fiery eyes, he entered the complicated password and opened the suitcase. There was one more layer in the suitcase. Enter the password. Open. One more layer, one more layer, one more layer. Li Tianlan's eyes gradually became dull. He looked at Dongqing Wujin, who meticulously carried out his actions, and wondered if this dull uncle was deliberately messing with him. The suitcase was open layer by layer, getting smaller and smaller. Dongqing Wujin finally took out a square box the size of a palm from the suitcase. "Here you are." Dongqing Wujin handed the small box to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan took it with a blank face. The box was plain black and unremarkable. He looked at Dongqing Wujin. "Open it." Dongqing Wujin stared at the box in Li Tianlan's hand, breathing fast. Li Tianlan touched the iron box in his hand. There was no password on the iron box, so he directly opened the lid. A weak silver light emitted from the box. The light was overflowing, very gorgeous. Li Tianlan's expression was on the verge of collapse. In the desert, he had a firm will comparable to the heavenly king heart. From Huading to the polar ground, he walked thousands of miles. In 3 years, his will became more focused and his mind became more stable. But at this moment, looking at the things in the box, he still couldn't help but burst into tears. This was the F*King new murderous weapon. This was the murderous weapon that Dongqing Hongguang said was the most suitable for him? Li Tianlan wondered if the Dongqing clan had any misunderstanding about him. Or it was a misunderstanding at all. Or did they take the wrong thing? He looked at the things in the box with a blank face. The silver light in the box flowed softly. "It's so beautiful." Dongqing Rushi looked at it in a daze and whispered. She reached out her hand. It seemed that she wanted to touch the things in the box, but she subconsciously withdrew her hand halfway. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched, and he finally couldn't help saying, It was a bracelet. The fact was obvious to Li Tianlan. In the box, there was a silver bracelet. Or a bracelet. It was a very gorgeous object. The bracelet had almost natural mysterious patterns, and the silver light was soft. It was fine even if a man wore it. But the problem was he didn't come here for the so-called bracelet. The murderous weapon is a metal far beyond the technology of Zhongzhou State. There are many theories about the murderous weapon, such as meteorites from outer space or unknown energy. They all make some sense. But in my opinion, it's more like a silicon-based life. Dongqing Wujin said eagerly. The murderous weapon is not researched. What we can do now is to activate it, because they themselves are powerful weapons. I experimented many times in the process of activating it. This piece of metal emits different wavelengths when it encounters different environments. I can't understand the meaning of those wavelengths for the time being, but I'm more inclined to think that it's their own emotions, but we can't communicate. This metal, I think, is a kind of energy that we can't understand for the time being. The so-called murderous weapon is only a part of its power. If we can thoroughly study the murderous weapon, the energy contained in this piece of metal is even enough to drive an aircraft carrier for a long time. Dongqing Wujin's eyes were burning. He looked at Li Tianlan and then said, "But now it seems that it is the most suitable as a murderous weapon in the dark world. How should I use it?" Li Tianlan had a headache. "It can be stimulated." Dongqing Wujin looked at the bracelet in Li Tianlan's hand and said, "It can be stimulated by any energy. The murderous weapon needs time to store energy. I studied the legend of Qin, so I roughly know that any murderous weapon has two states. The first is the storage state, and the second is the activation state. The activation state is when the murderous weapon is full of energy, but before it is launched. At that time, it will become the most easy state to vent energy. With its size, it is the most suitable for all kinds of firearms. Because of this, I think they are more like a kind of life. The storage state is their original form. The original form of the legend of Qin is something like a scepter. I used the fragment of the infinite sky to merge with the legend of Qin, and finally turned it into this." Li Tianlan listened carefully. The 12 murderous weapons were extremely mysterious even in the dark world. Very few people knew what secrets they held. Most people only knew that they were irresistibly powerful. If it can store energy one day, I have made a database. The Dongqing clan also has model data of the power of the murderous weapon. Dongqing Wujin said. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He remembered the battle that made Zhongzhou State's sword emperor Wang Tianzong famous, more than a decade ago. Tens of thousands of meters away, the human emperor directly killed Tianling, an invincible realm expert of night spirit at that time. That battle took place on the border of Zhongzhou State. Dongqing Wudi controlled the border control corps. So he must have a detailed understanding of the power of the human emperor. If the murderous weapon in your hand finishes storing energy, and you are not weaker than Wang Tianzong at that time, the power it can exert should be infinitely close to that of the human emperor. Dongqing Wudi whispered, "But after the legend of Qin integrated with the infinite sky, there are some side effects. Its energy storage time will also become very long. I can't calculate the specific time for the time being." Li Tianlan nodded. The human emperor was the most powerful murderous weapon among the 12 murderous weapons. It had the longest range and the longest energy storage time. Now the power of the bracelet in his hand was infinitely close to that of the human emperor, so the energy storage time would naturally be infinitely close. So he smiled, looked at Dongqing Wujin and asked, "So I can only take it with me for the time being? If you don't feel bad about it, you can use it as a cold weapon." Dongqing Wujin's eyes were calm. The murderous weapon can be stimulated by any energy, and after being stimulated, it can also change into any shape. Qi controlling, ice condensing, fire flaming, thunder shocking. These are theoretically energy, and they can all stimulate the murderous weapon. Treating the murderous weapon as a cold weapon. No force could be so extravagant. But Li Tianlan had no choice at all. He narrowed his eyes. The 4 realms of martial arts were theoretically energy, but in theory these energies could also be said to be sword intent. He put the bracelet on his hand and suddenly clenched his fist. The seemingly invisible sword intent in the air suddenly began to madly gather toward his palm. Li Tianlan's figure almost became completely invisible in the sword intent. In an instant, the silver bracelet on his wrist began to flow and change. The silver light in Li Tianlan's hand stretched along his sword intent. His sword intent was moving forward, and so was the silver light. The bracelet began to disappear. There was a long sword flowing with silver light in Li Tianlan's hand. Once again, the sword intent wrapped the long sword and shaped a new outfit for it. The silver light stretched forward. The sword turned into a silver spear. Then it turned into a silver sky halberd. The shape of the murderous weapon in the state of energy storage was completely stimulated or shaped by sword intent. Li Tianlan's eyes lit up. He looked at Dongqing Wujin and solemnly said, "Dean, please give it a name." "Falling stars," Dongqing Wujin said without hesitation. His face was no longer dull, but extraordinary and sharp. "This murderous weapon is called falling stars." Dongqing Hongguang and Tribulation, who were standing nearby, were stunned at the same time. Falling stars. These 4 words themselves were a kind of memory. The Dongqing clan once had an expert of the invincible realm. That was Dongqing Hongguang's father. Many years ago, the invincible realm expert of the Dongqing clan ranked 3rd on the divine list. In the entire Dark World, only the patriarchs of the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family ranked ahead of him. That was the most glorious period of Zhongzhou state, and also the most glorious period of the Dongqing clan and Jade Pool. And the most powerful unique skill of that expert was called Falling Stars. The Falling Star sword should have been the 8th move after the 7 swords of Jade Pool. However, that unique skill was short-lived in the Dark World and eventually lost, leaving only its name. Li Tianlan took a deep look at Dongqing Wujin and said, "Thank you." The falling stars in the form of the sky halberd vibrated wildly in his hand. Li Tianlan took a deep breath. His figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment he had gone straight into the sky. The sky halberd was already 3 meters long. Li Tianlan held the murderous weapon and pierced the sky. The night passed and the dawn rose. Outside Hanggu Pass, the silver flowing light swept the field with silent waves like a raging sea. The golden retriever stood on the ground and looked up at the sky, roaring. The silver flowing light exploded high in the sky. The silver light flowed in the sky, like falling stars. Li Tianlan stood high in the sky, dressed in white, and the sky halberd was still flowing with silver light. The night gradually dissipated in the barking of the golden retriever. The light of the dawn shone down and fell on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan slowly descended, with all the light between heaven and earth, like a god with unparalleled elegance. His feet landed on the ground. Chapter 291. People in Zhongyuan province were not the only ones who heard the thunder. The thunder rolled through the depths of the clouds. The sound wave spread and eventually turned into a soft sound between heaven and earth, then disappeared. The Wang family of Beihai. On Mount Dibing, Xian Xuanzi, the metaphysics grandmaster of Zhongzhou state who was a guest on Mount Dibing, suddenly looked up at the sky. The night passed, and the dawn was coming. Mount Dibing was emitting misty light. Looking at the sky from Mount Dibing, the sky was still gray. Xian Xuanzi looked at the sky, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. His pupils began to contract, and even his body became stiff. Taoist Wang Xiaoyao, who was sitting opposite Xian Xuanzi, was a little surprised. Xian Xuanzi had been in Mount Dibing for 7 days. Except for the first day when Wang Tianzong personally met Xian Xuanzi, Wang Xiaoyao accompanied him for the rest of the days. Many things in Mount Dibing were like this. Xian Xuanzi didn't feel neglected. Wang Xiaoyao's identity was honorable enough. And if Wang Xiaoyao didn't want to be hated, he was definitely a person who was hard to be hated. Wang Xiaoyao was the most popular person in the Wang family of Beihai, whether on the mountain or at the foot of the mountain. When there were disagreements within the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Xiaoyao was usually the peacemaker. When there were conflicts between the southeast factions, Wang Xiaoyao was also the mediator. He could even sit with Gu Xingyun, the first elder of Kunlun City, and talk and laugh naturally. There seemed to be no friend or foe in his mind, so everyone could feel his sincerity. Wang Tianzong liked peace. So whenever there were important guests on Mount Dibing, Wang Xiaoyao was the one who accompanied them. Wang Xiaoyao and Xian Xuanzi had a good relationship. They were friends despite their age difference. For Xian Xuanzi, sitting with Wang Xiaoyao was even more comfortable than facing Wang Tianzong. "Listen," Xian Xuanzi said in a deep voice. He was still in a clean Taoist robe, holding a horsetail whisk, with a youthful face and white hair. He looked like an immortal. "Listen to what?" Wang Xiaoyao looked helpless. After spending so much time with Xian Xuanzi, he was used to the metaphysics grandmaster's occasional ramblings. The place where the two of them were was one of the most suitable places for sightseeing in Mount Dibing. Wang Xiaoyao and Xian Xuanzi were waiting for the sunrise. But now when the sky was just lit up, Xian Xuanzi was so excited. Wang Xiaoyao could not understand. Dragon roar. Xian Xuanzi's deep tone was full of solemnity. In fact, he did not hear the clear thunder. But at that moment, he had vaguely heard a dragon's roar. He looked in the direction of the Central Plains province, muttered to himself for a long time, and then said slowly, "The dragon is in the Central Plains." He suddenly turned to look at Wang Xiaoyao and said seriously, "I want to see His Majesty Sword Emperor now. This matter concerns the success or failure of my trip. Be quick." Wang Xiaoyao glanced at him and took out his mobile phone without saying a word. Dawn broke over the horizon. There was a morning breeze on Mount Dibing. The snow-white horsetail whisk in Xian Xuanzi's hand suddenly moved with the wind. The white silk at the front of the horsetail whisk floated up, stood upright, and gently trembled with the wind, like a pale flower without any color. The invisible wind between heaven and earth ran through the whole horsetail whisk. Xian Xuanzi's face changed dramatically. Snap! A crisp and clear sound rang on Mount Dibing. In Wang Xiaoyao's suddenly focused sight, the horsetail whisk in Xian Xuanzi's hand suddenly exploded. Xian Xuanzi spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood spots dyed the broken horsetail whisk red. White mist rose in the pavilion of Mount Dibing. The thick mist suddenly rose and covered a large area of the mountain. The white mist rose high in the sky with Xian Xuanzi's extremely angry gasps. The mist was spreading and condensing. The mountain that was washed by the white mist became greener. The white mist was rising. The morning light completely lit up. The bright morning sun jumped out of the endless sea in the east. The golden light fell, and the white mist floating high in the sky became a cloud. The cloud drifted farther and farther, and finally disappeared completely. Xian Xuanzi, with a pale face and blood on the corner of his mouth, stared at the direction where the cloud disappeared. In front of him, the fragments of the horsetail whisk had completely disappeared. Old baldass! Xian Xuanzi clenched his teeth, and his eyes were full of resentment. Haunting you! Taoist! Wang Xiaoyao finally reacted in the shocking change in front of him. He took a step forward and helped Xian Xuanzi sit down. What the hell is going on? Xian Xuanzi took a deep breath. In an extremely short period of time, his originally white and lustrous hair had completely dimmed, turning into an aged grayish white. He wiped the blood on the corner of his mouth with his trembling palm, and suddenly grasped Wang Xiaoyao. "I want to see His Majesty Sword Emperor now." He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's eyes seriously. The distance between them was very close. Wang Xiaoyao could clearly see the ferocious light in his eyes. The sky was completely bright. The long night turned into a day. The sun was shining. In the early summer morning of Mount Dibing, birds were singing and flowers were fragrant. A violent thunder suddenly broke the silence of Mount Dibing. A deep and dazzling blue color suddenly appeared on the top of Mount Dibing. The boundless sword intent exploded on the top of the mountain. The sword intent surged and roared on Mount Dibing. The raging sea at the foot of the mountain began to surge, and the waves crazily slapped the cliff. The sound of the tide boiled with the spreading sword intent. The blue color on the top of the mountain kept spreading. It blocked the sun and distorted the space. The sound of the wind spread in the light. In the silent world, there were only tens of thousands of dazzling thunderbolts left. The thunderbolts wandered and spread in the air. In the blink of an eye, the thunderbolts that blocked the sun had merged and turned into a giant sword hundreds of meters long. The giant sword rotated in the air, and the sword intent kept falling like rain. Wang Xiaoyao looked at the top of the mountain with surprise. Shengxiao broke through. His voice was filled with joy from the bottom of his heart. Wang Shengxiao had been active in the outside world in recent years. After Li Tianlan, he could be said to be the well-deserved leader of the young generation in Zhongzhou State. Even in the dark world, he had made a name for himself and was known as the heavenly son of Beihai. It was not until 3 months ago that Wang Shengxiao returned to the Wang family of Beihai. He had made further preparations, and after 3 months of silence, he finally succeeded today. That year, Wang Shengxiao was 26 years old. At the age of 26, he was at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm with wind and thunder veins. The battle for the heavenly sun. Wang Shengxiao was already at the forefront of the invincible realm. Wang Xiaoyao was high-spirited. But Xian Xuanzi's face grew more and more gloomy. He smiled bitterly, looked at the direction where the thunderbolts floated and scattered, and murmured, "It's too late." "What's too late?" A voice suddenly sounded, extremely calm. It was not Wang Xiaoyao who asked the question. It was Wang Tianzong who quietly appeared in the pavilion. Wang Xiaoyao did not inform him to come. But as soon as he saw Wang Shengxiao break through, Wang Tianzong directly appeared in front of Xian Xuanzi. "The dragon vein has been formed." Xian Xuanzi looked at Wang Tianzong and said bitterly, "Your Majesty, there is no chance." Wang Tianzong frowned. Wang Xiaoyao's body also tightened. The dragon vein. With Li Guangtu's treason, there had been no dragon vein in Zhongzhou State for more than 20 years. This was something that all the big shots in Zhongzhou State knew. Because of this, Zhongzhou State, known as the world's most powerful country, had been experiencing ups and downs in recent years. Now the dragon vein had been formed? Wang Xiaoyao looked at Wang Tianzong, and then at Xian Xuanzi. His mouth moved, but he didn't say anything in the end. Wang Tianzong's eyes were completely focused. "Just now?" he asked. "I don't know." Xian Xuanzi shook his head, and his eyes were really blank. "Maybe just now, or maybe before that. Wu Wei set me up once before he died. I can't grasp the state of the dragon vein now." The luck accumulated over the years was robbed. There was unwillingness and unvented anger in his crying and laughing face. "I lost. Your Majesty, I can't do anything about Shengxiao now." Wang Tianzong was silent. Xian Xuanzi had a high reputation in Zhongzhou State, but in recent years, some people privately said that this metaphysics grandmaster was not as aloof as Great Master Wu Wei at all. Instead, he looked more like a metaphysics grandmaster employed by the Wang family of Beihai. It made sense. Xian Xuanzi had done a lot for the Wang family of Beihai over the years. His trip was said to be a guest, but in fact it was the most critical time in the Wang family of Beihai in these years. For many years he and Great Master Wu Wei had been trying to reshape the dragon vein. Both of them had made their own progress. But their final choices were completely different. Great Master Wu Wei chose Li Tianlan, and Xian Xuanzi chose Wang Shengxiao, who would inherit the dragon vein. To both of them, it would be a huge karma. Xian Xuanzi came to Mount Dibbing this time to transfer all the luck accumulated over the years to Wang Shengxiao, so that Wang Shengxiao could bear the prototype of the dragon vein in one fell swoop. But now the dragon vein had been formed. The infinite luck was directly plundered at the moment when the dragon vein was formed. Wang Shengxiao had lost the chance. Whether it was intentional or not, it could be said that the move completely destroyed the overall plan of the Wang family of Beihai. If such an accident didn't happen, once Wang Shengxiao carried the dragon vein and took a whole set of immortality potions, he could rush into the invincible realm in the shortest time. 3 years. 4 years? Maybe a shorter time. But now this opportunity was gone. "The dragon vein is with Li Tianlan," Wang Tianzong said. He didn't use a question sentence, but an affirmative sentence. Xian Xuanzi looked at Wang Tianzong. Wang Tianzong's eyes were deep and calm, without any emotion. Xian Xuanzi nodded. "What will happen to him in the future?" Wang Tianzong asked. Xian Xuanzi shook his head and said softly, "No one can judge his destiny, and no one can speculate the trend of the dragon vein. In the future, with the dragon vein, the stronger Zhongzhou State is, the stronger Li Tianlan will be." From another perspective, it meant that the stronger Li Tianlan was, the stronger Zhongzhou State would be. Invincible to all enemies, unload your armor when you see the dragon. Xian Xuanzi said in a deep voice, "Li Tianlan has come back. He is now in Zhongzhou." Wang Tianzong's body seemed to shake slightly. He thought for a long time and asked, "No chance?" "I'm not sure," Xian Xuanzi said. "I can't be sure how long he carries the dragon vein. If it's a short time, it's possible to pull it out, but Shengxiao has no chance. If he can successfully pull out the dragon vein, Xiaoyao and Dijiang are the most suitable. If Li Tianlan is really integrated with the luck of Zhongzhou State." Wang Tianzong looked at Xian Xuanzi deeply. "What will happen to the Wang family of Beihai in the future?" Xian Xuanzi glanced at Wang Tianzong, and thought that the Wang family of Beihai was in a crisis. Wang Shengxiao couldn't enter the invincible realm, and the plan was completely disrupted. What was there to say about the so-called future? He was silent for a long time and then said lightly, "I don't know." Not knowing meant that he was not sure. But in the eyes of a real hero, not knowing meant that it was not good. The future of the Wang family of Beihai was not good. Wang Tianzong's eyes flickered and he said calmly, "What should I do now? Kill Li Tianlan?" Xian Xuanzi was silent for a moment and said lightly, "The dragon vein has a foundation. If you want to pull it out, you must do it in the place where the dragon vein was born." He paused, lowered his eyelids and said softly, "Your Majesty, if you want to take back the dragon vein, you must first take Lonely Mountain in Linen." Chapter 292. Wang Tianzong did not express his position in the end. The fate of Zhongzhou State was related to the overall situation of the Wang family of Beihai. He chose to remain silent. Silence was often more powerful than a promise. Wang Tianzong focused on the fruit plate on the marble table in front of him. The fruits on the plate were very fresh. A drop of crystal clear water dripped down from the grapes on the plate. The air rippled. Wang Tianzong's figure gradually faded and eventually disappeared. Wang Xiaoyao took 2 steps forward. He looked at the ashen-faced Xian Xuanzi with a complicated look in his eyes. The dragon vein was reunited. Li Tianlan carried the dragon vein. Wang Shengxiao lost his chance. The dragon vein was pulled away. He occupied Lonely Mountain in Lin, and then killed Li Honghe. He thought about the conversation between Xian Xuanzi and his elder brother. He had a lot of questions, but in the end he didn't say anything. Xian Xuanzi sat numbly in the pavilion. In a short time he was sweating all over, and the sweat soaked through his Taoist robe. This metaphysics grandmaster, who had become more and more important in Zhongzhou State after Great Master Wu Wei's death, looked extremely weak. He picked up a grape expressionlessly. Skinning's hand was obviously shaking. He placed the fresh and tender fruit into his mouth. It tasted sweet and sour. Xian Xuanzi looked down at his trembling hands. His eyes were filled with exhaustion and weariness. In his decades of metaphysics career, from the very beginning as a swindler to a grandmaster, he had been beaten, scolded, driven away, respected, feared, and worshipped. He had experienced ups and downs throughout his life, encountered unimaginable poverty, and enjoyed dazzling luxury. Xian Xuanzi suddenly laughed at himself. In this life he had helped many people achieve their goals, but it seemed that he had never accomplished anything that he truly wanted to do. Because there was only one thing he wanted to do. Xian Xuanzi's eyes were blank. After his fate completely dissipated, he looked like an old man who was about to die, lonely and desolate. At this moment, he suddenly thought of the ups and downs of his life. He had a daughter. His daughter was buried by his ambition. In the early summer morning, Mount Dibbing was warm, and the fragrance of flowers spread all over the mountain. Xian Xuanzi suddenly began to miss the cold wind and snow in the past. He breathed with difficulty and forced his weak and exhausted body to stand up. He whispered, "Let's go down the mountain." "I'll see you off," Wang Xiaoyao said in a timely manner. The two walked out of the pavilion, walking on the stone path full of blooming flowers. The flowers in the mountains were in full bloom, and the path was winding down through the flowers and plants. In the quiet morning, there were colorful flowers everywhere. Xian Xuanzi's body swayed, and he staggered down. Wang Xiaorao frowned and finally couldn't help but say, "Taoist priest, you are not in a good state now. Why don't you rest on the mountain for 2 days?" He had a good relationship with Xian Xuanzi, and now he was really thinking about him. But now, Xian Xuanzi wanted to see the snow. He shook his head and said softly, "I'm fine." "Look at you." Wang Xiaoyao's frown deepened. "What?" Xian Xuanzi looked at Wang Xiaoyao with a smile and said gently, "Are you afraid that I will die?" Wang Xiaoyao smiled bitterly. Even if Xian Xuanzi had lost many years of luck, he was still the metaphysics grandmaster of Zhongzhou State. Such a person could not be judged by common sense, but his current state was indeed worrying. "I won't die," Xian Xuanzi said. His eyes were resolute. He only wanted to do one thing, but he achieved nothing in this life. He dared not die, and he couldn't die. Great Master Wu Wei could have survived that year, but he had to die. But Xian Xuanzi didn't mind living on. In the flowers all over the mountain, a piece of white suddenly appeared in front of the stone path. That was the purest color. It was like the pure snow that had never been trodden on. Xuanzi looked at the white flowers in front of him. The white flowers fell to the ground one by one in the morning wind. The wind was stronger. The white petals began to swirl and fly in the wind, like falling snow. Xuanzi looked at it quietly and suddenly said, "What flower is this?" "This is snow eagle," Wang Xiaoyao said with a smile. "It's a new breed cultivated by my sister-in-law a few years ago. It only blooms in spring, and it will all wither after early summer." Snow eagle, Xuanzi looked at the petals flying in the air. He had never heard of the name of this flower, but it was really beautiful. "Summer solstice is a thoughtful person," Xuanzi said softly. Wang Xiaoyao smiled and didn't say much. The two walked down in a sea of white flowers, as if they were walking on a snow mountain. The white petals were blowing and falling in the wind, constantly undulating. A touch of delicate fragrance gradually wafted in the air. The fragrance was mellow and deep. Wang Xiaoyao smelled the strange smell, and wondered if his sister-in-law had improved the genetic composition of snow eagle again. Xuanzi looked at the flowers and plants in front of him deeply. Snow eagle spread over a large area. Whether it was moving forward or backward, it was surrounded by snow-white petals, with unchanging beauty. The environment was confusing. Xuanzi's eyes gradually fell into a trance in the unchanging scenery. The petals were disappearing. The delicate fragrance was getting stronger. There was only wind and snow left in front of him. The wind and snow were cold. Xuanzi subconsciously tightened his Taoist robe. A butterfly appeared in front of him. Xuanzi suddenly came to his senses. Looking at the white flowers around him, he realized that he was on Mount Dibbing, and the white around him was just flowers after all. The butterfly fluttered in front of Xuanzi, flapping its wings colorful. Xuanzi stopped and looked at the butterfly flying in front of him quietly. It was so free and carefree. The butterfly kept hovering in front of Xuanzi. Xuanzi could see its wings and even its small eyes. The eyes were very deep, as if they were looking at him. Wang Xiaoyao also stopped walking. He didn't see the butterfly. He just looked ahead. At the end of the snow eagle, less than 100 meters in front of him, stood a woman in white. She was quiet and ethereal, as if she was integrated with the endless snow eagles. Several figures stood beside her, carefully guarding her, without emitting any aura. Wang Xiaoyao wasn't surprised. He felt like he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. He didn't know how the other party appeared here without being discovered. This was even more terrifying than seeing a ghost. The butterfly flew away. It disappeared in the falling snow-like petals. Xuanzi, who didn't know how long he had stopped, felt lost. He laughed at himself and took a step forward subconsciously. The winding stone path suddenly became a bottomless abyss. Time seemed to be fast-forwarded countless times. The wind and clouds were gone high in the sky, and the sun kept rising. The temperature began to become scorching, and then it became hot. The whole sun seemed to be pushed from the east to the west by someone's hand. The twilight completely enveloped. Xuanzi took a step in the air, and suddenly fell. The twilight shrouded the abyss, and it was extremely quiet and dark everywhere. Xuanzi's heart kept sinking with his body. He didn't think about what was wrong with it. The disordered time and the abyss that shouldn't have appeared were subconsciously filtered in his mind. In his heart, there was only the most instinctive fear when a person was about to die. Xuanzi kept struggling in the abyss. He wanted to shout, but he couldn't make any sound in the extreme darkness and silence. His body fell down uncontrollably. It was like falling from the human world to hell, with no end. The sound of waves suddenly appeared around him. The majestic sound of waves swept everything. Xuanzi still didn't feel anything wrong. He remembered that he was on Mount Dibbing, and the sea was under Mount Dibbing. The surging waves were deafening. A light suddenly lit up in the endless darkness above. The light occupied all of Xuanzi's vision. Xuanzi groaned and his body fell to the ground hard. The dark ground was like a soft sea surface. The grass and flowers were vivid in the lonely light in the sky, but the whole ground was rolling like waves. Xuanzi looked around. All the light fell on him. Vaguely, he only felt that he was standing on the only small piece of land in the darkness. The almost boiling sound of the tide occupied all of his hearing. Xian Xuanzi laughed. As if he was glad that he survived the disaster, he laughed very happily. Why are you happy, Taoist? A chilly voice suddenly rang out. The voice was very light, but it spread all over the sky in an instant. Even the roaring sound of the tide was instantly suppressed. The echoes kept echoing in the sky. Why are you happy? Why are you happy? Happy. The light in the sky gradually dissipated with the voice. Xian Xuanzi finally saw the surrounding scene clearly. There was light in the darkness. There was heaven and earth. The sky was glowing with a strange red color. The scarlet light shone on the sea below. The seawater was pitch black, flowing in countless huge whirlpools. He was on a ground of about 10 square meters. The ground was too small. As far as the eye could see, it was all dark seawater that could swallow everything. There was no end in sight. A few dark beads stood in the seawater, as if they went straight to the sky. The scene looked very clear, but it was extremely far away. Who are you? Xian Xuanzi looked ahead. In his sight was a woman in a white dress. It was too dark here. She stood in the place with her back to the light. Xian Xuanzi only felt that she looked a little familiar, but he was not sure who she was. The woman did not answer Xian Xuanzi's question. She just stared at him quietly. Xian Xuanzi saw a pair of deep and bright eyes. Those eyes were calm and cold, like the deep Milky Way. Taoist, what's your identity? Why are you so down today? There seemed to be a hint of a smile in the woman's voice. She said softly, You're really like a dying old dog. Xian Xuanzi fell silent. She was silent for a long time before she said with uncertainty, Are you going to kill me? He felt that it was ridiculous. With his ability, no one would want to kill him when they found him. Was there an exception today? Otherwise, the woman's voice became softer and softer, like the chilly wind blowing from the sky. You don't deserve to die? Xian Xuanzi squinted at the woman in the dark. He felt that she was more and more familiar. More than 20 years ago, after Li Guangtu committed treason, you have been planning something. Over the years, you have 3 chances. The first one was 16 years ago, and it was destroyed by some external factors that could not be interfered with. The second one was 10 years ago. You felt that you were not sure, so you hesitated and missed the opportunity. The third one was about 4 years ago, and it was destroyed by me. The woman's tone was indifferent. The dragon vein of Zhongzhou State is your 4th chance. Taoist, do you really care about the dragon vein? You know that the Wang family of Beihai's fate is extremely prosperous, and they can't bear the dragon vein at all. But all these years, you have been tampering with the fate of the Wang family of Beihai, creating an illusion. Finally, you deceived Wang Tianzong and Zhongzhou State. Now you are regarded as the chief metaphysics grandmaster of the Wang family of Beihai. You care about the dragon vein? The woman said coldly. It's all a cover. You have always wanted to provoke a war between the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family. Even though the Li family is now at the end of its road, you don't want to let them go. Don't you deserve to die? Xian Xuanzi's body suddenly became stiff. As if the biggest secret in his heart had been revealed, his breathing suddenly became rapid. He stared at the exquisite figure in the faint light and said ferociously, Who the hell are you? Is it important? The woman said coldly. Xian Xuanzi took a deep breath. Under the blood-red sky, he laughed somewhat crazily. Yes, it's not important. The important thing is that you seem to have seen through my plan. That is to say, my plan was destroyed by you again, right? I deserve to die. Don't the Li family deserve to die? Don't Li Tianlan deserve to die? No, they deserve to die too. I will find a chance to completely destroy them. If I am lucky enough to survive this time, when Wang Tianzong kills Li Honghe, I will personally extract the dragon vein from Li Tianlan. I will use the dragon vein to completely destroy the fate of the Wang family of Beihai. Haha, haha, they all deserve to die. Deserve to die. The woman took 2 steps forward. You don't approve of Tianlan? She asked softly. Why should I approve of him? Xian Xuanzi's face was cold. He really didn't like Li Tianlan. When he first met Li Tianlan in Huading, Xian Xuanzi saw too much ambition in his calm eyes. That was the desire that was suppressed to the extreme. Too crazy and intense. That was the ambition that could destroy everything. Xian Xuanzi would not admit that he saw the shadow of himself in those eyes. He just didn't like Li Tianlan. Does this matter have anything to do with you? The woman suddenly asked. Xian Xuanzi was stunned. No matter what, he must die, Xian Xuanzi said. You hate the Li family. The woman spoke slowly, but she was very sure of it. You seem to know a lot of things. Xian Xuanzi looked at her coldly. Then you should also know that the child of the Li family was a girl. That child died prematurely. Where did this bastard come from? Is he Li Guangtu's illegitimate child? Illegitimate child. The woman was silent. She seemed to be thinking about something. The killing intent in the air began to fade quietly. The blood-colored light in the sky gradually faded and returned to darkness. The furious sea was no longer boiling. The ground under Xian Xuanzi's feet expanded wildly, from 10 meters to thousands of meters in an instant, like a small island. Answer a question for me. The woman's voice echoed between heaven and earth. Do you hate the Li family the most? Or Kunlun City? Xian Xuanzi's expression changed dramatically. He who had lost all his luck was in the weakest and most dazed state today. At this moment, his heart was on the verge of collapse. What the hell do you know? He looked at the woman who was getting farther away from him as the ground under his feet expanded, and his tone was furious. I know your surname is Li. The woman said softly. You want to provoke a war between the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family. There would be no suspense in this war, but Li Honghe's current state was too dangerous. If the Wang family of Beihai took action, the Wang family of Beihai would definitely suffer heavy losses, and the Li family would be completely destroyed when the human emperor didn't have enough energy. Your metaphysics has long been deeply rooted in people's hearts. When you use the dragon vein to wipe out the luck of the Wang family of Beihai, the Wang family of Beihai will vanish in less than 20 years. At that time, Kunlun City will dominate Zhongzhou State. It's a very good layout. For so many years, who could have thought that the metaphysics grandmaster of the Wang family of Beihai is actually from Kunlun City? No, I'm wrong. This should be the deal between you and Kunlun City, right? Xian Xuanzi fell to the ground, completely disheartened. You don't care about anything. You don't care about the dragon vein, yourself, or even Zhongzhou State. You only care about your daughter. Many years ago, you gave up for your so-called ambition, and now you want to take it back with all your might. How stupid. The woman slowly walked over from afar and commented rudely. I'm really stupid. Xian Xuanzi laughed bitterly at himself. I shouldn't have. So answer my question. Do you hate Kunlun City more? Or the Li family more? The woman asked slowly. Does it make sense? Xian Xuanzi said numbly. If I don't die, the Li family will be destroyed. Of course it makes sense. I actually don't mind you destroying the Li family, and I can even help you deal with Kunlun City. The woman said softly. This sentence seemed to directly express her position. Xian Xuanzi suddenly looked up. Are you from the Wang family of Beihai? Are you summer solstice? We met in Linen. The woman finally walked to Xian Xuanzi. My surname is Qin. A dreamy and cold face appeared in Xian Xuanzi's sight. It was perfect and flawless, with a touch of majesty in its nobility. It's you. Xian Xuanzi's tone was very low and a little unbelievable. It's you. You obviously don't know martial arts. This is not martial arts. Qin Weibai said slowly. This is the spiritual domain. Boom. With her voice, the sky suddenly fell and the earth cracked. Countless cracks appeared in the sky that had almost completely disappeared. The sky poured down, and the endless deep sea and the surroundings seemed to be pressed down by an invisible pressure in an instant. The ground was rising. The whole sea kept sinking, thousands of meters, tens of thousands of meters. An abyss was formed between the ground and the sea. The sky was still breaking. Xian Xuanzi finally realized that something was wrong. He looked at this unrealistic scene, and suddenly realized that he was not in Mount Dibbing at all. Where am I? He asked. Mount Dibbing. Qin Weibai's answer was a little unexpected. Xian Xuanzi suddenly thought of something. He looked at Qin Weibai with a complicated look. Hypnosis. Qin Weibai was indifferent and silent. Xian Xuanzi completely understood. He remembered the butterfly he saw not long ago. Xian Xuanzi suddenly felt a little ridiculous. He pointed at the scene of the sky falling and the earth cracking around him. So these are all fake? What I see is a scene created by hypnosis. But you're real, Qin Weibai said calmly. She looked at the deep sea that was still sinking. If you jump from here, you won't wake up during the fall. When you really fall into the deep sea, you will fall into a state of brain death. No one can find out the cause of your death. Xian Xuanzi looked at Qin Weibai with a complicated look. What a marvelous skill, he said softly. Hypnosis had always been the unique skill of the Li family. But it was the first time that Xian Xuanzi heard that hypnosis could be used to this extent. This field was too mysterious, even no less than martial arts. Until now, he didn't understand why Qin Weibai became the second most powerful person in Samsara Palace. I'm flattered, Qin Weibai said lightly. Who taught you hypnosis? Xian Xuanzi asked curiously. Li Kuangtu? No, the time is not right. Is that Li Hongha? Qin Weibai glanced at him. She waved her hand. Light shone on the horizon. Xian Xuanzi's sight returned to normal. I said, I don't mind you destroying the Li family, Qin Weibai said. Because I hate them too. But I heard that you're Li Tianlan's woman. Xian Xuanzi looked at Qin Weibai. The lines on Qin Weibai's face suddenly softened. She said softly, so you can deal with the Li family, Kunlun City, and the Wang family of Beihai. These have nothing to do with me. You just need to support Tianlan. Today, I was going to kill you. You have a lot of secrets that I know, and there are also things that I don't know. But here, I can know everything. I will take everything from you. And then I will let you die a horrible death. Qin Weibai said softly. But I suddenly find that it seems to be a good choice to let you live. Let me live and help the heir of the Li family? Xian Xuanzi sneered. You're helping me. Qin Weibai looked into Xian Xuanzi's eyes. What do you want? Xian Xuanzi was full of doubts. He was a metaphysics grandmaster, but he was not omniscient. On the surface, Qin Weibai's position had always been very simple. But only when he really got in touch with her did he find that her thoughts were so complicated. Didn't you say that I was a witch who brought disaster to the country? Qin Weibai smiled faintly. I want a chaotic world. I need a new era after extreme chaos. Now the dark world is too peaceful. Xian Xuanzi looked at Qin Weibai dumbfounded, as if he was looking at a lunatic. The dark world was too peaceful? In the past few years, except for the year after the final battle of Heaven Capital, when had the dark world been peaceful in the past 2 years? It was a complete mess. Anyway, the Taoists won't care about these. Qin Weibai said. You know the possibility of your successful deal with Kunlun City. In this case, why don't you help me? You give me what I want, and I'll give you what you want. What you want is the so-called new era. Xian Xuanzi looked at Qin Weibai. And your life? Qin Weibai looked at Xian Xuanzi without backing down. I'll help you fulfill your wish so that you can die in peace. How about that? Deal. Xian Xuanzi looked calm. This is not a deal. Qin Weibai shook her head. This is surrender. From today until you die, you belong to the Samsara Palace. Kneel. Xian Xuanzi thought of a strange title. After a long silence, he straightened up, tidied up his Taoist robe, and knelt down in front of Qin Weibai. Boss, Xian Xuanzi said calmly. Boom. Heaven and earth completely collapsed. The darkness, the deep sea, the drifting land, everything disappeared. Xian Xuanzi's eyes instantly became clear. He stood on the path of Mount Dibbing, surrounded by white petals that were flying like snow. About 100 meters in front of him, a woman was turning around casually. Xian Xuanzi's ears were full of the earth-shattering roar, and Qin Weibai's calm but irresistible voice. Welcome to the Samsara Palace. P.S. I'm really not digging a pit at will. Almost all the pits are dug bigger when a little clue is given in the previous chapter. I can fill them now, but I can't extricate myself. A chapter of more than 6,000 words. Chapter 293. The so-called beautiful legs, from a rigorous aesthetic point of view, involved many standards such as leg length, thigh-body ratio, thigh circumference, leg belly circumference, thigh length, calf length, and so on. Li Tianlan thought it was bullshit. Beautiful legs were beautiful legs, and there was no need for those fancy data. Li Tianlan had been peeking at Dongqing Rushi's legs. Dongqing Rushi's legs were very slender and long, and they looked white, tender, and well-proportioned. Under the sunlight, her legs, which were leaning against each other, seemed to have a luster that made people's mouths dry. It was a very straight and enchanting feeling. Li Tianlan didn't want to look, but every once in a while, he couldn't help but take a peek. The legs under the denim shorts were white, and every inch of skin seemed to show youth and vitality. Dongqing Rushi had a ponytail. Her long hair was tied up, and the off-the-shoulder short-sleeved shirt exposed her delicate and smooth shoulders. Her collarbone was also very beautiful. Li Tianlan's eyes wandered. He felt very obscene. But he really couldn't control himself. The bitter cold life of the glacier in the polar region was very quiet. Quiet also meant loneliness. Li Tianlan had been thinking about his martial arts before, so he didn't feel anything. But now his martial arts was close to completion. But the road had not yet come to an end. Now he walked into the colorful world and faced Dongqing Rushi, especially when he thought that she had a fiancé. Such an ambiguous identity, together with the delicate fragrance and skin of her, brought Li Tianlan a fatal temptation. In the past 3 years, Li Tianlan had not seen any beautiful women. But he was a man who had experienced women. Li Tianlan felt that the corners of his mouth were a little dry. He licked his lips and couldn't help but take another look. Really white. It was too wretched, shaking his head in confusion. Li Tianlan wanted to get a bottle of water. Stop the car. Dongqing Rushi suddenly said. High speed. Li Tianlan pointed to the road ahead that was constantly moving backward. Can't stop. His somewhat turbulent and chaotic heart seemed to calm down a little as he spoke. The red sports car was speeding on the highway. It was on the way from Zhongyuan to Huating. Tribulation did not accompany Li Tianlan to Huating. The two met. After Li Tianlan got falling stars, it was Dongqing Rushi who went with him. In the early hours of this morning, the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State finally determined the time of this graduation maneuver of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy. July 31st. The day before Army Day. The location was in Huating. There was still about a month before the maneuver. By now, the order to suspend classes had probably reached the 2 special warfare academies. The elites of the Deep Sea Academy would leave for Huating in the next few days and adjust their state in Huating. Dongqing Rushi was only a few days ahead of schedule. Tribulation was asked to stay by Dongqing Wudi, the standing minister of the army headquarters, who rushed to Zhongyuan overnight after the meeting. Therefore, Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi were the only ones on the trip to Huating. From early morning to afternoon, the distance had exceeded more than 1,000 kilometers, and Huating was getting closer and closer. Li Tianlan did not expect that Dongqing Rushi would ask to stop when they were about to arrive at Huating. But as soon as she spoke, Li Tianlan felt much more relaxed. The two of them were not talkative people to begin with. Most of the time they were silent. The atmosphere was strange and ambiguous. Li Tianlan's mind seemed to become restless with the silence. Talking is good for concentration. The service area of Huating is right ahead. Li Tianlan said. Why don't we wait? Can you wait? Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan and asked. Her eyes were big and full of clarity. The eyes were the window of the soul. Li Tianlan did not know if this sentence was right, but most women with a pair of beautiful eyes were not ugly. Qin Weibai's eyes were cold and dreamy. Even at the softest time, her eyes were still as bright as the Milky Way. Wang Yuetong's eyes were dark and pure, with wisps of cleverness and cunning, which had a very seductive and enchanting charm. Dongqing Rushi's eyes were very clear. They were as clear as water, which was pure and flawless, even close to holiness. Each had its own characteristics. Li Tianlan glanced at her inexplicably and did not know what she meant. Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan quietly, and her eyes were a little strange. Li Tianlan felt like she was looking at an extremely wretched pervert. He was a little embarrassed, and his face became unnatural. It was shameful to be caught peeping. Li Tianlan decided not to look at her anymore. It doesn't matter. Dongcheng Rushi said crisply, "Stop the car. I'll change seats with you." As long as she didn't kick him out of the car. Li Tianlan thought about it silently and parked the car on the emergency lane on the side. Dongcheng Rushi got out of the car but did not move. Li Tianlan walked around the back of the car to the passenger seat. Dongcheng Rushi looked at him, and her eyes were still a little strange. Li Tianlan touched his nose. When he was about to say something, Dongcheng Rushi had already turned around and went to the driver's seat. The red sports car started again and drove to hooting with the roar of the engine. Dongcheng Rushi took out a pack of cigarettes from the storage box beside her and handed it to Li Tianlan. "I remember you smoke, so I prepared this for you. I don't know if you can get used to it. I said I wanted the best, so they gave me this." Li Tianlan took it and looked at it. The cigarette box was printed with the logo of the Deep Sea Academy and a few ancient characters. Li Tianlan had heard of this kind of cigarette. It was not in circulation on the market, but the Sky Academy sold it. A box of 3 credits was equivalent to a student's food for half a month. "Thank you." Li Tianlan opened the cigarette and lit one. He inhaled the smoke into his lungs. He hadn't smoked for a long time, and his brain suddenly felt dizzy. Li Tianlan fell silent and enjoyed it. "Why do you always peep at me?" Dongcheng Rushi didn't seem to know what to say to Li Tianlan, so she asked a question that made Li Tianlan extremely embarrassed. Li Tianlan coughed in the smoke. He really didn't have the face to say that he didn't peep. It was already very obscene to be caught peeping, and it was even more embarrassing to be exposed. How hypocritical would he be if he didn't admit it now? He subconsciously touched the silver bracelet on his wrist and pretended to be calm. "Oh, your legs are very beautiful, I just want to." Dongcheng Rushi reached out and grabbed Li Tianlan's palm. Her hand was very small, white and delicate, without calluses. Li Tianlan could feel her delicate skin trembling slightly. She grabbed Li Tianlan's hand and put it on her thigh. Dongcheng Rushi's little face blushed. Maybe she couldn't react in time, or maybe she didn't want to hide at all. Li Tianlan didn't resist at all. His hand fell on Dongcheng Rushi's thigh, and he easily felt the tenderness and elasticity of the second miss of the Dongcheng clan, the genius of Jade Pool. "Touch it," Dongcheng Rushi said in a clear voice. "You've been looking at me as if you want to eat me. You're driving absent-mindedly, which is very dangerous." So she changed seats with Li Tianlan. Would it be more convenient for Li Tianlan to touch it? Li Tianlan touched it. He really touched it. Dongcheng Rushi's legs were very slender, but they were indescribably plump and smooth, like warm jade. Dongcheng Rushi's legs were slightly tightened, and her face was getting redder and redder. "Your hands are very cold," she said. "Maybe I'm used to staying in the polar ground," Li Tianlan replied, and his eyes were extremely hot. "The polar ground?" Dongcheng Rushi hesitated. "When I entered the fire-flaming realm, my master wanted me to go to the polar ground. But I thought it was very far and I didn't really want to go. A year ago, when I entered the thunder-shocking realm, I wanted to go to you, but my master didn't let me go." "It's a good place," Li Tianlan said, "but it's really not suitable for girls to go alone. It's such a big place, you can't find me even if you go there." He stroked Dongcheng Rushi's legs carefully, as if he was playing with and appreciating a rare work of art. He didn't seem to be touched at all by the fact that Dongcheng Rushi entered the thunder-shocking realm. It was not until this time that Dongcheng Rushi suddenly realized that although they didn't talk much along the way, they still had something to talk about if they wanted to. Especially for Li Tianlan. He had been away for 3 years and now he came back. Even if he didn't talk about the general trend of the dark world, and the already chaotic situation that made everyone's scalp numb. But at least Li Tianlan always had to pay attention to the younger generation. But Li Tianlan didn't ask at all. He simply asked how several members of the East Emperor Palace were doing now. After getting no bad news, he changed the topic. Wang Shengxiao, Guhan's Han, Jiang Shangyu, or others Li Tianlan didn't ask at all. He didn't ask about tribulation or Dongcheng Rushi. Dongcheng Rushi didn't think it was his negligence. He didn't ask. Did he not want to ask, or did he disdain to ask? Dongcheng Rushi turned to look at Li Tianlan, wanting to ask him about his current realm. The hand on her thigh was getting stronger and stronger, more and more presumptuous. The big hand gradually moved up. Dongqing Rushi could feel the calloused hand rubbing her delicate skin. Her foot on the gas pedal was a little weak. The hand finally went into her shorts. Li Tianlan touched a piece of cloth that seemed to be very thin. Dongqing Rushi's legs were completely closed. She bit her red lip and looked at Li Tianlan. The look in her eyes was not joy, anger, rejection, or pandering. It was faint. It was a very strange look. Li Tianlan's hand reappeared in her shorts, and his expression was very calm. Not in the car. Dongqing Rushi bit her lip and whispered. This was definitely a rejection that could make people fantasize. Li Tianlan looked at her in surprise. Not in the car. Was the emphasis of this sentence the first two words or the second two words? Li Tianlan took his hand off Dongqing Rushi's leg. He put his hand in front of his nose and sniffed. The movement was as natural as lighting a cigarette. Dongqing Rushi's beautiful face was completely red, and she didn't know what to say. Do you think I'm very obscene? Very obscene? Li Tianlan recalled the delicate fragrance and asked softly. Dongqing Rushi shook her head subconsciously. She blushed and didn't dare to look at Li Tianlan. After a while she stammered. We are engaged. Li Tianlan frowned. You don't mind? Do you like it? Dongqing Rushi asked back. Li Tianlan was silent. He had always been a person who could face his desires honestly. He grunted and said, I like it. He was telling the truth. Snow country and the polar region. Those 3 years were really too cold, so cold that it felt like his blood was going to freeze completely. He didn't know whether it was because he hadn't seen a woman for a long time, or Dongqing Rushi was still changing in the past 3 years. When he saw Dongqing Rushi this time, Li Tianlan only felt that she was more beautiful than 3 years ago, and her figure was better. Li Tianlan had an irrepressible desire in his heart. He needed a woman. He needed the tenderness and warmth he longed for. He saw a mirage on the sea. The scene was beautiful, but it was also very cold, colder than the polar region. Li Tianlan really liked the feeling of touching Dongqing Rushi's thigh. It was very warm. For no reason. He didn't know whether he liked Dongqing Rushi or not, but he liked this feeling. No one would dislike it. Then I don't mind. Dongqing Rushi whispered. As long as you're happy. In Zhongyuan, she asked Li Tianlan for a hug, because that could make the elders in the family happy. Now she was willing to let Li Tianlan profane her, because that could make Li Tianlan happy. As for herself, she had nothing to be unhappy about. If he was happy, she seemed to be happy too. This should mean that she didn't mind. She had learned a lot of things since she was a child. Didn't they all make him happy? As long as he liked them. Even if I don't like you, you're willing? Li Tianlan thought about it and asked very seriously. It was a little shameless, but his eyes quietly became solemn. Dongqing Rushi thought about it. She wanted to say that they were together because of the engagement. She wanted to say that she didn't like Li Tianlan either. But did she really not like him? She didn't know. She really didn't know. Since she was a child, she had always had a feeling that her life was prepared for Li Tianlan. This feeling was like instinct. It didn't matter whether she liked him or not. Then do you like me? Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan carefully. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. He thought of his new mobile phone. The screen of the mobile phone was no longer that photo. Qin Weibai's name was no longer on the communication software. He had been blacklisted and couldn't be contacted. His palm trembled slightly and he said hoarsely, I like Qin Weibai. Dongqing Rushi seemed to think of something. She handed her hand to Li Tianlan. She wore a lady's watch on her wrist. The watch was elegant and exquisite. There were a few diamonds on it, but they were all colored diamonds. In the light, the watch looked indescribably luxurious and expensive. My sister gave it to me. It's a couple's watch. Our names are engraved on the hands. It's a miniature sculpture. You can only see it with a magnifying glass. The letters on the dial are ancient Greek. My sister gave it to me for my birthday last year. Is it beautiful? Li Tianlan nodded with a smile. Sister Qiuqi gave it to you? She's so generous? It's not that sister. Dongqing Rushi shook her head. It's Sister Little Bai. She looked at Li Tianlan and said, "Qin Wei Bai." Li Tianlan looked at the watch on Dongqing Rushi's wrist with a dull face. His eyes were complicated. "My sister ordered 4 watches. One was given to me, one was sent to the Wang family of Beihai, and one was for herself. I sent your watch to Emperor Dong's palace. Her own watch has her, and your names engraved on the hands. But your watch is more complicated. It seems to have our names engraved on it." Dongqing Rushi looked at the watch on her wrist. A smile appeared on her beautiful face. Her face was pure and happy. Li Tianlan's emotions were tumbling inside. He didn't know what it meant. But looking at Dongqing Rushi's innocent face full of smiles, his heart suddenly moved. 4 watches. The miniature sculpture hands. Dongqing Rushi. Li Tianlan. Qin Wei Bai. Li Tianlan. The other one was Wang Yuetong. Li Tianlan. Dongqing Rushi looked innocent when she said this. This was definitely not the behavior that a woman should have. Even if she didn't know much about the world. Li Tianlan finally knew what the problem was. Behind this beautiful and pure appearance, Dongqing Rushi seemed to have lost her self-obsession in the constraints of the engagement. She was fine as long as he was fine. This Dongqing Rushi was different from Li Tianlan's impression. Most of his impression of her came from the time they got along in East Island and Heaven Capital. The memory kept coming back. At this moment, Li Tianlan really understood. It turned out that the Dongqing Rushi he saw in Heaven Capital was not her most of the time. Except for the beginning. It was her other personality, Dongqing Yueshan. Li Tianlan's eyes were a little cold. Chapter 294. 7,000 words chapter. After getting off the highway, Li Tianlan drove the red sports car directly to the city center. It was not on the way to the East Emperor Palace or the Sky Academy. Dongqing Rushi was a little curious about where Li Tianlan was taking her. "I'm going to my sister's house for dinner tonight," Dongqing Rushi said softly. Dongqing Qiuqi had been working in Huading. She could be regarded as the main force of the giant group to infiltrate Huading. In the past few years, all the groups were quietly playing games and purging, both internally and externally. 2 years ago, Dongqing Wudi's promotion could be said to be the biggest gain of the giant group. But there were also many small gains. The giant group put a few heavyweight chess pieces in Huading. Dongqing Qiuqi's position became more stable as a result. Knowing that her sister and her future brother-in-law were coming to Huading, Dongqing Qiuqi specially called them and asked them to go to her house for dinner in the evening. "There's still time," Li Tianlan said. Dongqing Rushi nodded and said no more. She looked at her legs quietly. Her legs were still fair and tender. But at this time, there was a clear handprint on her thighs that had been kneaded and caressed. Dongqing Rushi blushed and reached out to cover the mark with her shorts. The shorts were very short, so the handprint was still there. Dongqing Rushi stared at the handprint, which represented that she had been molested. She pursed her red lips and was a little dazed. The sports car entered the central ring from the outer ring, got off the inner ring, and continued to drive. Dongqing Rushi looked out of the window more and more. Her sister, Dongqing Qiuqi, was now one of the directors of Huading and the leader of Wudong New Area. In addition, the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy held maneuvers every year. So Dongqing Rushi was no stranger to Huading. This was the direction to Puxi. Looking across the rushing Huangpu River, she could clearly see the high-rise buildings of Wudong New Area. The car entered Anning District. Finally, it stopped in front of a gray building. The building was 12 stories tall and spacious, giving off an extremely solemn and dignified feeling. However, in terms of height, it was the least eye-catching among the surrounding skyscrapers. Dongqing Rushi looked at the tall building in front of her. The sign above was shining in the afternoon sun. Blue Sky Group. Here. She looked at Li Tianlan and said with some uncertainty. In recent years, there had been basically no local tycoons in Huading. All the major forces were involved in it, and there was chaos in the tranquility. When many people set their sights on the more profitable Wudong New Area and the high-level competition in Huading, only the Special Warfare Group quietly took several districts in Puxi under its command. Anning District was one of them. Blue Sky Group, Dongqing Rushi thought silently. She didn't have much contact with the outside world, but she also vaguely knew that this was a force of the Special Warfare Group that had developed rapidly in Huiting in the past 3 years. Right. Looking out of the window, Li Tianlan was a little uncertain. What was the Blue Sky Group? In his impression, this place should have been a logistics company 3 years ago. Let's go take a look. Li Tianlan pushed the car door open. The early summer afternoon had already begun to heat up. The air was filled with dryness, but it felt like an illusion. The moment Li Tianlan opened the car door, Dongqing Rushi felt a cold wind blowing through the air. The cold wind seemed to carry with it a blizzard as it poured into the carriage fiercely. It came abruptly, left abruptly, and then disappeared without a trace. Dongqing Rushi's body trembled subconsciously, and she followed Li Tianlan. The two went directly to the gate of the Blue Sky Group. There were serious-looking guards at the gate. There were also 2 security guards standing in front of the hall. Li Tianlan walked all the way, entered the gate, and entered the hall. The security guards stood motionless. The staff of the Blue Sky Group came and went. The crowd kept shuttling around Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi. The two followed a middle-aged man who looked like a high-level official into a special elevator. The middle-aged man pressed the button for the 9th floor, and then looked at the rising number of the elevator with a bored face. Dongqing Rushi and Li Tianlan stood behind him. Dongqing Rushi finally noticed something. She looked at Li Tianlan and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He can't see us. Li Tianlan said indifferently. He can't hear us either. Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan. She was not surprised that Li Tianlan had such a means. Any thunder-shocking realm expert could use the distortion of the air to completely block the sight of ordinary people. Dongqing Rushi could also do it. But this was different from being invisible. This method completely tore the surrounding air with power, twisted the air, and turned it into a blurred state. In such a state, it was difficult for ordinary people to find anything. But once the distance was too close, a real expert could always find something strange. So this kind of skill sounded good, but in fact, it didn't have much effect. Now Dongqing Rushi was standing beside Li Tianlan, but she couldn't notice anything different around her. This alone was enough to show that Li Tianlan was now stronger than her. Even if Li Tianlan was starting over, even if Dongqing Rushi had entered the thunder-shocking realm, the elevator went all the way up to the 9th floor. The high-level official of the Blue Sky Group, who had never found anything wrong, walked out of the elevator and entered the chairman's office. Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi also walked in silently. The office of hundreds of bungalows was extremely luxuriously decorated. The pale silver wallpaper was shining, the wooden floor, the custom-made sofa and bar counter, the huge bookshelf with few books, all kinds of antiques and jades. A middle-aged man dressed casually sat behind the desk, exuding the fragrance of sandalwood. Hearing someone coming in, the middle-aged man raised his eyelids and said indifferently, "What's the matter?" Li Tianlan glanced at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was about 50 years old. He looked ordinary and his eyes were calm, with a faintly discernible reserve and seriousness. There was nothing unusual about him. Li Tianlan knew he was in the right place. Dongqing Rushi's clear eyes finally showed an unconcealable surprise. She stared at the middle-aged man behind the desk. "Boss Liu, I think we need to think carefully about our cooperation with the Flourishing Age Fund. In fact, in this matter, we are at a disadvantage." The high-level official of the group who entered the office said cautiously, "It's not a disadvantage." Boss Liu waved his hand. "We didn't get the expected benefits, but it's still profitable. The Flourishing Age Fund was one of our biggest investors a few years ago. We owe them a favor for the rapid development of the Blue Sky Group. There's no need to think about this matter. You talk to the Flourishing Age Fund and sign the contract on behalf of me." Dongqing Rushi looked at Boss Liu in front of her quietly. "I know him," she suddenly said softly. "This is Director Liu." Her voice was crisp and soft, and Dongqing Rushi could hear it clearly herself. There was no fluctuation in the air. Boss Liu was still talking to his subordinates. Dongqing Rushi suddenly turned her head and looked at Li Tianlan, who was a little careless. "What realm are you in now? The Invincible Realm?" There was a strong sense of disbelief in her tone. A 22-year-old invincible realm expert? Zhongzhou State, no, the Dark World had never appeared in the history. Li Tianlan just shook his head simply. He looked at Boss Lu in front of him and said with a smile, "This is my dog. I want to know something. He's the most suitable person." Dongqing Rushi's eyes were complicated. This was also what shocked her. She knew Boss Lu, so she knew what all this meant. Dongqing Rushi saw Boss Lu in front of her almost every year in the past 2 years. 2 years ago, he was still in the Sky Academy. Lu Xiuyuan, the former deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. In the maneuvers of the 2 academies in the past 2 years, Lu Xiuyuan was one of the team leaders of the Sky Academy every time. Lu Xiuyuan, the Lu family of Huating, Li Tianlan's dog. Dongqing Rushi felt that this sentence contained a lot of information. The Lu family of Huating was an important part of the peripheral forces of Kunlun City. Li Tianlan came to Huating to start a feud with the Lu family. Lu Xiuwei, who was killed by him in the entrance maneuver, was Lu Xiuyuan's younger brother. But now Lu Xiuyuan was Li Tianlan's dog? She looked at Boss Lu, who didn't know that he was approached, and felt ridiculous. Lu Xiuyuan was already an expert close to the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. But now his behavior was so ignorant. She and Li Tianlan were right in front of him, and they were talking, but he didn't notice them at all. The surrounding space was calm and tranquil, and everything was normal. It made an expert close to the peak of the thunder-shocking realm appear next to him without him noticing. This didn't seem to be something that could be done by twisting space. This was a domain. The domain of the invincible realm. Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan, and there was a hint of a smile in her clear eyes. Like the ripples on a gentle lake in the breeze, charming, gentle, and incomparably beautiful. She took Li Tianlan's hand and shook it. "What do you mean?" Li Tianlan looked at her blankly. "I don't know." Dongqing Rushi's clear voice echoed in this small, almost independent space. "I just want to hold your hand." She was very happy, because Li Tianlan was so powerful now. Li Tianlan glanced at her, and patted her leg. He could be sure that Dongqing Rushi's main personality had no malice toward him. That kind of feeling might not be love, but it had become an instinct that she had to accept. But Li Tianlan couldn't be sure whether the other side of her was good or evil. 2 completely independent personalities that didn't interfere with each other were undoubtedly the most difficult to grasp. Li Tianlan wanted to know what Dongqing Yueshan wanted to do. So he brought Dongqing Rushi to the Blue Sky Group. Dongqing Yueshan didn't show up. But Li Tianlan knew that she could see it. She could see the true position of the Lu family and part of the strength that Li Tianlan deliberately misunderstood. Li Tianlan believed that these were very valuable. If Dongqing Yueshan really wanted to kill him, his relationship with the Lu family and his vague strength would soon spread throughout Zhongzhou State. As for what would happen to the Lu family at that time, it was not a problem for Li Tianlan to consider. The Lu family was his dog. But he had no feelings for this dog, at least far less than the golden retriever that had been with him for 3 years. If the Lu family was exposed, then they could go to hell. If he could use the Lu family to test Dongqing Yueshan's true attitude toward him, Li Tianlan wouldn't feel that it was a loss at all. Looking at Dongqing Rushi's beautiful smile, Li Tianlan was in a trance. He knew that behind this beauty, there was a pair of eyes looking at him. And he didn't know whether the eyes were gentle or cruel. The top management of the Blue Sky Group who reported in the office finally left. Dongqing Rushi carefully felt the surrounding space. The space was normal. Li Tianlan said directly, "The Blue Sky Group seems to be developing well?" "Who?" Lu Xiuyuan, who was deep in thought, suddenly jumped up from the sofa. Li Tianlan's voice rang directly in his ear. Lu Xiuyuan, who was shocked, sounded extremely sharp. Li Tianlan didn't speak, but looked at Lu Xiuyuan with a faint smile. Lu Xiuyuan also saw Li Tianlan. His mind went blank in an instant, and he stared at the half-smiling face in a daze. That clear yet blurry face. In 3 years, the Special Warfare Group of Zhongzhou State became more and more powerful, and the Lu family in Huating was also developing rapidly. With the rise of the Special Warfare Group, the Lu family also received a lot of cooperation and investment in various aspects. Lu Shuyuan resigned from the Sky Academy a year ago and returned to the newly established Blue Sky Group, controlling the Curtain, the top intelligence organization in Huading behind the scenes. The Lu family's strength continued to grow in the smooth sailing. Lu Shuyuan really experienced the feeling of the sea and the sky. But the moment he saw Li Tianlan, he suddenly felt a shackle that strangled him, and even the entire Lu family, around the neck. Because this young man had the most secret of the Lu family that could not be exposed. It was also because of the young man's strength 3 years later. Lu Shuyuan didn't know when Li Tianlan came in. His inner emotions were tumbling, and a feeling called fear gradually spread, with coldness and despair, from the bottom of his heart to the limbs. Li Tianlan became different. 3 years ago, Li Tianlan gave people the feeling of calmness, but it was the kind of calmness that could still make people feel restless. Even on the night when Li Tianlan controlled the life and death of the Lu family, Lu Shuyuan didn't feel that Li Tianlan was so powerful that it made people desperate. But now, he didn't feel anything. Lu Shuyuan couldn't feel anything. Li Tianlan sat there, and he was in sight, but he didn't give people any feeling at all. He was like the most perfect illusion. He seemed real and illusory, as if he didn't exist. Beside him was a beautiful young woman. The sofa where he sat down. The flowers and plants on the tea table in front of the sofa. The teacup next to the flowers and plants. Even the dust on the ground. Everything had a more sense of existence than Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was there, but it seemed that he didn't exist. The muscles on Lu Shuyuan's face trembled uncontrollably. For 3 years Li Tianlan disappeared, and the members of East Emperor Palace returned to the Sky Academy. The Lu family didn't do anything wrong to Li Tianlan. But at this moment he couldn't control his fear at all. He didn't know how strong Li Tianlan was now. But at least at this moment, standing in front of Li Tianlan, he really felt like an ant. He took 2 steps forward, bowed deeply to Li Tianlan, and said in a trembling voice, "Your Highness. Long time no see." Li Tianlan waved his hand casually. "Sit down." Lu Shuyuan subconsciously walked over and sat down. The moment he bent down, he inadvertently glanced at Dongqing Rushi's long legs under her shorts. He saw the red handprint on Dongqing Rushi's thigh. Lu Shuyuan's face froze, and he quickly turned his head. He had seen Dongqing Rushi, the female genius of the Deep Sea Academy, but he didn't know what Li Tianlan was doing with the daughter of the Dongqing clan before he came here. No matter what, Lu Shuyuan felt confused. Blue Sky Group. Li Tianlan read it silently and said with a chuckle, "What's wrong? Has the Lu family changed its business?" "Yes, the scale has expanded," Lu Shuyuan replied meticulously. His eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan, and he didn't dare to look away at all. Because once his eyes wandered, Li Tianlan's figure would completely disappear from his perception, and his voice would come from all directions. The emptiness was frightening. The real illusion didn't exist, but it was everywhere. The group. No, Kunlun City has risen very fast in recent years. In the eyes of outsiders, the Lu family is the representative force of Kunlun City in Huading. So many people come to us for cooperation, and even invest in us. Flourishing Age Fund, Beihai Group, 9 States International. Many people have invested a lot. Lu Shuyuan said cautiously. The Lu family has developed very fast. At present, it is not only logistics but also involved in many industries. So we discussed and established the Blue Sky Group. What about the curtain? Li Tianlan asked. He didn't have a clear concept of the magic of money for the time being. In his opinion, most of the value of the Lu family came from the intelligence department of the curtain. That was what he valued the most. It's okay. Lu Shuyuan said a little unnaturally, and his eyes subconsciously avoided Li Tianlan's. It's okay? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and asked softly. Lu Shuyuan stood up uneasily. The whole Lu family was Li Tianlan's dog, so the Lu family's industry and power naturally belonged to Li Tianlan. I'm incompetent in this regard. Lu Shuyuan gritted his teeth and braced himself to say, Jiangnan society officially entered Huading 3 years ago. The curtain failed to withstand the pressure, and was suppressed after many confrontations. In recent years, although the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City had disputes, They were generally in a state of cooperation. Gu Qianchuan called and asked us to restrain ourselves for the time being and leave some space for Jiangnan society. Li Tianlan looked at Lu Xiuyuan with no expression. Your Highness, after you left, the dark world was very chaotic. At this time, most people would like to see the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City work together, so we have not taken too drastic actions against Jiangnan society. Jiangnan society, Li Tianlan suddenly said. Their leader is Lu Shuanghua. Lu Shuyuan was stunned and said, yes. Li Tianlan calmly changed the topic. How's the dark world recently? It's very chaotic. Lu Shuyuan thought carefully. 2 or 3 years was not a long time, but too many things had happened in the dark world. All of this seemed to be the aftermath of the final battle in Heaven Capital, but in fact, it was a one-time outbreak of the contradictions accumulated in the dark world over the years. Behind the prosperity, the dark world was always an era of turmoil. But in the past many years, it had not been as lively as in the past 2 years. At the beginning it was Zhongzhou State and Samsara Palace. Lu Shuyuan chose his words carefully. Not long after your Highness left, it was said that Gu Xingyun personally went to Lonely Mountain. Then the elites of the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City left Zhongzhou State and declared war on Samsara Palace. Gu Xingyun personally attacked the master of Samsara Palace but failed. Not long after, the Jiang family of South America also intervened. Li Tianlan's eyes were cold. Lu Shuyuan looked at his expression and continued. At first, it was said that the Jiang family of South America was talking with Samsara Palace. But after the master of Samsara Palace killed several experts, the Jiang family of South America directly changed their position. They asked Samsara Palace to hand over Qin Weibai and the Legend of Qin, or exchange them with Blue Sky Underworld. The second master of the Jiang family of South America, and Gu Xingyun seriously injured the master of Samsara Palace. At that time, it was very lively. All 12 supermasters of Samsara fought from Europe to South America, and there were losses in all aspects. Li Tianlan remained calm, and continued to listen. Then the Purgatory of Heaven Capital took the lead to take action. Your Highness should know Annan State, right? Lu Xiuyuan asked. Li Tianlan nodded. In the border war 3 years ago, the Border Praetorian Corps went straight into the territory of Annan State for 800 miles. After the war, Annan State always wanted to take back that land. Annan State wrote to the United Nations several times, but Zhongzhou State used the excuse of helping Annan State to suppress the rebellion. They didn't withdraw until the second spring after your Highness left Huiting. Of course, the withdrawal was also nominal. Those who should stay still stayed. The 20,000 elites of the Thunderbolt Battalion of the Border Control Corps took off their uniforms and stayed there. They were led by Dijiang, a super expert of the Wang family of Beihai. On the surface, they had nothing to do with Zhongzhou State and were self-proclaimed kings. But in fact, they still obeyed the orders of Zhongzhou State. They played the role of the rebels of Annan State, and had several conflicts with Annan State. It was at that time that the Purgatory of Heaven Capital came to Annan State, and said that they would help them take back the land. Li Tianlan kept digesting the new content in his mind, and didn't say a word. Lu Shuyuan's voice kept ringing. Daybreak and Dawn of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital jointly injured Dijiang, and occupied a part of the ownerless land. Wang Tianzong went there in person, but he encountered deity, and the two sides were tied. Because Zhongzhou State had ostensibly retreated, the Wang family of Beihai had to deal with the Southern Territory in person in order not to leave any evidence. The Heaven Punishment Troop went south, and the Sunluo Life-Prolonging and Athanasi Halls of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital were also stationed there. The two sides had been in a stalemate. At present, although the Wang family of Beihai had the advantage, it couldn't do anything to the Purgatory of Heaven Capital for a while. The hunted Samsara Palace also found an ally. The Dark Knights helped the Samsara Palace block the Jiang family of South America. The murderous weapon, the Dark Saint Spear, fired a year and a half ago and seriously injured the second master of the Jiang family of South America, Jiang Qianyan. As the Dark Knights took action, the Knights Templars launched a war against the Dark Knights in the name of purging heresy. The Vatican and Arsis were said to be very interested in the Samsara Palace. Arsis had appeared twice in the chaos of the superpowers. The Samsara Palace stayed in Star State for a long time. Gu Xingyun, who stayed in Star State for a long time, seemed to have aroused the dissatisfaction of Cass Rotter, the god of war of Star State. The elites of Star State expelled the experts of Kunlun City in the name of the FBI. The fantasy world of North America also showed its attitude and followed Cass Rotter to suppress all foreign forces. The Jiang family of South America invited a very powerful black ghost from Africa. Several European countries had suffered losses from the black ghost when they were developing African business, so the European Union also intervened. Lu Shuyuan kept talking, only feeling that his mouth was dry. Li Tianlan had long been dull and almost numb. The Wang family of Beihai, the Jiang family of South America, the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, the Samsara Palace, the Dark Knights, the Knights Templars, the fantasy world. These were the most powerful dark forces in the dark world today. Kunlun City, Cass Rotter, who was known as the god of war of Star State, and several countries of the European Union all represented the official forces of their respective countries in the dark world. These forces did not show up much even in the last decisive battle of Heaven Capital. Not to mention that there was also a fucking black ghost from Africa? In short, now the dark world has lost all order and chaos. Many independent experts who are alone have been forced to get involved. There are more and more invincible realm experts fighting. There are wars almost every day. Even the relationship between the enemy and ourselves has become blurred. Everyone is killing in a mess. At present, there is no sign of stopping at all. Is this a world war? Li Tianlan suddenly asked. Yes. Lu Xiuyuan nodded without hesitation. It is a world war in the dark world, and it is the most extensive one. What about Snow Country? Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly asked, no news from the Polar Ground Alliance? The Polar Ground Alliance has long been in internal strife. They can't even take care of themselves now. How can they have time to care about the outside world? Lu Xiuyuan shook his head. Li Tianlan felt strange inside. The independent forces in the dark world, the official forces, a large number of thundershocking realm experts, at least more than 10 or even more invincible realm experts. It was a chaotic war. Now it was so chaotic that it had forgotten its original purpose. All the forces were involved. What a big scene it was. Lu Xiuyuan said that there was no sign of this chaotic war stopping for the time being. Li Tianlan understood this situation. At this point, it was not that they didn't want to stop, but that the war could not stop at all. The situation was completely out of control. Whoever stopped would die. Under the seemingly peaceful and prosperous times, this was a dark and bloody era. As strong as the invincible realm experts were, they were just dancers dancing on a tightrope. One wrong step, and they would be doomed eternally. But the war would eventually come to an end. After the war, what would the dark world look like? Li Tianlan was silent. The general trend, which was countless times more complicated than the final battle of Heaven Capital, was right in front of him. Under the general trend, the invincible realm experts were like nonentities, and the national destiny of a country was also like nonentities. Li Tianlan still couldn't retreat, because Samsara Palace was in this chaos. Qin Weibai was in Samsara Palace. How could he retreat? Once again, he felt the suffocating pressure. The road ahead was difficult. He took a deep breath and whispered, "How are my brothers now?" "The people from East Emperor Palace are fine." Lu Shuyuan hesitated. At present, the lowest realm is Yu Qingyan, who is in the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm. The highest realm is Li Beitian, who is about to enter the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm. Today, East Emperor Palace is one of the strongest forces in the Sky Academy. Oh, by the way, Your Highness, I have a piece of information about Li Beitian. Lu Xiuyuan looked at Li Tianlan and said, Li Beitian will have a final battle tomorrow. Your Highness can go and see. Final battle? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. With whom? It's the last disciple of Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, Gu Yulan of Jilei Mountain. Chapter 295. It was lunchtime when he arrived at Wudong New District No. 1 courtyard. Dongqing Rushi was very familiar with the council compound of Wudong New District. After she took out her pass, she was unimpeded all the way. When the red sports car with the fuel tank running out stopped in front of building No. 1, the graceful and gentle Dongqing Qiuqi had already come out to greet her. Beside her was a young man who looked to be in his 30s. The young man wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses and was dressed casually. He looked cultured and elegant, amiable. Didn't he come in the afternoon? What took you so long? Dongqing Qiuqi asked softly, stroking her sister's head with a smile. This was a woman who greatly resembled his mother. What was similar wasn't her appearance, but rather her gentle, elegant, and naturally noble temperament. She was like the peony of the Central Plains, graceful, beautiful, and dignified. Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan. No matter how slow-witted she knew where she went in the afternoon was a secret that couldn't be revealed. She said in a clear voice, "I went to choose gifts for my sister and brother-in-law." Li Tianlan handed her a delicately wrapped scroll and said with a chuckle, "Sister Qiuqi, this is a token of my appreciation." This was really just a small token of my sincerity. After coming out of the Blue Sky Group, he and Dongqing Rushi randomly entered a nearby painting shop and picked a painting. The painter was not a famous artist, but he was just a little famous. It was a painting worth less than 20,000 yuan, and Dongqing Rushi had used her card. There was a picture of a rock flying 10,000 miles in the scroll. No one would dislike it if it was given to a high-ranking official in the political world. Dongqing Qiuqi looked at him with a smile. Her smile was dignified and warm, but the way she looked at Li Tianlan was extremely complicated. "We are family." She took the scroll and said softly, "Why are you so polite?" Li Tianlan smiled and turned his eyes. Dongqing Qiuqi introduced them in a timely manner. "Tianlan, this is my lover Zhou Yuanshan. He led a team to Huiding for an inspection, and dropped by to see me. Big sister Qiuqi and brother-in-law are really a perfect match. It's enviable." Li Tianlan stretched out his hand and smiled. "Brother-in-law, I'm Li Tianlan." He had heard the name Zhou Yuanshan more than once. The first time he heard the name was mentioned by Dongqing Qiuqi. 3 years ago, Zhou Yuanshan was the mayor of Luojing. The last time he heard the name was when Tribulation mentioned it. On the way from Guqin Island to the Central Plains, Tribulation introduced the giant group, especially the important figures close to the Dongqing clan to Li Tianlan. Among them was Zhou Yuanshan. Zhou Yuanshan, male 37 years old. 2 years ago he was promoted from the position of Luojing City's mayor. Now he was one of the directors of Zhongyuan Province and the leader of Luojing City. In the entire political arena of Zhongzhou State, Zhou Yuanshan and Dongqing Qiuqi could now be regarded as one of the most eye-catching couples. They were young, promising, and had unlimited potential. It could be said that they were the focus of the major groups in Zhongzhou State. Yuanshan Army 1 Ne Cheng Wabak Chang Yuanshan He Qiu Dong, the Cheng Qiu 1 and said He Cheng and Dongqing for Dong and out. Was. Now, with Dongqing Wudi entering the army headquarters, Dongqing Qiuqi's rise would slow down correspondingly, and Zhou Yuanshan would usher in a real explosive period. The future of the two depended on how the Dongqing clan, the Zhou family, and the Bai family, the 3 representative families of the giant group, operated. "We're a family. Brother, I won't call you your highness. It's too distant. How about I call you by your name in the future?" Zhou Yuanshan held Li Tianlan's hand and said in an easygoing tone. He was not a very handsome man, but he had a very approachable affinity, very elegant, and very sincere. "That's all I want." Li Tianlan held Zhou Yuanshan's hand with a little force. At night, the street lamp in front of the No. 1 courtyard was on. The soft light of the street lamp shone down, stretching the 2 men and 2 women in front of the door into a few long shadows. The 2 men shook hands face to face, their palms held in the shadow. It looked very absent-minded, but it was full of strength. The 2 looked at each other and smiled. Their smiles were very simple, and so were their thoughts. Zhou Yuanshan would not have thought that the young man in front of him would become the most powerful backer in his political career in the future. Li Tianlan also would not have thought that the brother-in-law in front of him would become the most powerful pillar in his political career in the future. Many final endings, in fact, were already doomed from the first time they met. They walked into the villa in the #1 courtyard. The air conditioner in the villa hall was on, and the air was very cool. You talk first. Dongqing Qiuqi made a cup of tea for Li Tianlan and said with a smile, Rushi, come with me to the kitchen to help. It's almost ready. Dongqing Rushi responded and followed her sister. Zhou Yuanshan took out a bottle of Wuliangye from the wine cabinet next to him, pushed the tea in front of Li Tianlan aside, and said with a chuckle, Qiuqi is too much. She told you not to be polite, but she was polite to you. Tianlan, drink with me tonight and stay here. There's plenty of room. His smile was very easygoing, but Li Tianlan felt that he was up to no good. He often saw this kind of smile when Li Beitian or Ning Qianqing were playing a prank. Li Tianlan smiled silently, but his heart gradually relaxed. He said with a smile, Brother-in-law, I'm afraid that Rushi and I will disturb your reunion with Sister Qiuqi by staying here, right? Zhou Yuanshan was stunned, and then he laughed. He looked elegant, but at this time his smile was indescribably free and easy, which was very infectious. We're an old couple, not as passionate as you young people. Zhou Yuanshan sat next to Li Tianlan, poured him a full glass of white wine, and said mysteriously, And Tianlan, don't worry, this place is soundproof. I heard that the house in West Mountain is not as soundproof, so she didn't move there after discussing with me. If you don't believe me, I'll take you to have a try. No need. Li Tianlan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. West Mountain was the location of the Huading counselor's compound. Dongqing Qiuqi was one of the counselors of Huading, and could be regarded as one of the leaders of the whole Huading. But her actual position was the head of Wudong New area, so she rarely intervened in the affairs of other places in Huading. She was more like a counselor, but such a stable style also allowed her to run Wudong New area flawlessly. She didn't affect the whole Huading, and it was difficult for the other counselors of Huading to affect Wudong New area. Dongqing Qiuqi lived here, which indirectly showed her attitude. It was nonsense to say that it was for soundproof. Let's not talk about this. Tianlan, you're the heavenly son of Zhongzhou State. I fully support you and Rushi. Zhou Yuanshan patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder, picked up the glass and said, Come on, let's drink first. 2 glasses full of white wine clinked together. Zhou Yuanshan was generous, and Li Tianlan was generous. They drank up. Zhou Yuanshan put down the glass and looked at Li Tianlan, who was expressionless. He gave him a thumbs up and said with a smile, Sit down, I'll make 2 dishes to go with the wine. Let's drink slowly. Li Tianlan nodded and looked at Zhou Yuanshan's back thoughtfully. The sisters in the kitchen were another scene. Dongqing Qiuqi was cutting vegetables. She looked at her sister who was washing fruit by the sink and said with a smile, Rushi, why did you come with Tianlan? Ah. Dongqing Rushi answered subconsciously. Grandpa knew that Tianlan was going to Zhongzhou, so he asked me to go there from Yuzhou. That's why we came to Huading together. What did you talk about on the way? Is there any talk of marriage? Dongqing Qiuqi looked at her sister's back with a complicated look and whispered. We didn't talk about that. Dongqing Rushi said honestly. In fact, they didn't even talk much on the way. Dongqing Rushi seemed to think of something. Her clear eyes dimmed slightly, and she said softly, Sister, I did something wrong in Heaven Capital. He might be angry, so he doesn't want to marry me. Nonsense. Dongqing Qiuqi shook her head with a smile. Tianlan is not such a narrow-minded person. Why would he be angry and not want to marry you? After so long, all the misunderstandings should fade away. But he didn't listen to my explanation at all. I didn't see him until today after I came back from Heaven Capital. I haven't had a chance to talk to him. Dongqing Rushi seemed to be a little wronged. I wanted to talk to him, but now I don't dare to. If he is still angry, he may ignore me again. What the hell is going on? Dongqing Qiuqi asked helplessly. Tell me, I'll help you find a way. Dongqing Rushi shook her head silently and said nothing. Well, don't think too much. Tonight is a chance, isn't it? Dongqing Qiuqi put the vegetables into the pot with a smile. She walked to Dongqing Rushi and whispered in her ear, I have plans tonight. Don't leave. I told your brother-in-law before we came. Now they are drinking. Your brother-in-law is famous for being able to drink 1,000 cups. I'll ask him to put Tianlan down, and then you can coax him. In less than 3 minutes, Zhou Yuanshan had brought 2 plates of dishes to go with wine, a pile of peanuts and a pile of cucumbers. He sat down beside Li Tianlan and said with a smile, I don't know what the 2 sisters are talking about in the kitchen. Anyway, we're not in a hurry to eat. Let's drink first. Tianlan, I'll drink with you tonight. Let me tell you, if there are no guests at home, as long as I come home, your sister usually bans me from drinking. Tonight is the right time to drink. Come on. Li Tianlan looked at his brother-in-law, who was really talkative but not annoying. He shook his head and drank up the wine again. The wine glass was big. 1 glass of wine was more than 2 taels. After 2 glasses of wine, Zhou Yuanshan's eyes suddenly became deeper. He poured another glass of wine. This glass of wine is to you. I don't know much about the final battle of Heaven Capital, but it is said that you turned the tide. For this reason, I have to drink with you. Tianlan, I'm convinced of the title of Heavenly Son of Zhongzhou State. That time it was very complicated, brother-in-law. I'm not as noble as you say. Li Tianlan shook his head and remembered that night 3 years ago. The woman who accompanied him to watch the starry sky in Heaven Capital. Not counting the mirage on the sea. That was the last time he saw Qin Wei Bai. She was more beautiful than the starry sky. No matter what, you've done a great job. Zhou Yuanshan ate a peanut. If it weren't for you, Zhongzhou State would have suffered a heavy loss. In recent years, many people in Zhongzhou State have been talking about you. They say that your foundation in Heaven Capital has been destroyed, and you hide for fear of revenge. Tianlan, I don't know martial arts. But how are you recovering this time? Li Tianlan was stunned. This question was a doubt to others. It was also a question to himself, because there was no reference for his path. But after all, this question didn't need to be kept secret. So he thought about it seriously and said slowly, It's hard to say. But in terms of realm, it's probably equivalent to entering the thunder-shocking realm? 22 years old. Entering the thunder-shocking realm. Zhou Yuanshan naturally didn't know how old was the youngest thunder-shocking realm expert in the dark world in the past 200 years. He had no concept of martial arts, but he also knew that the invincible realm was above the thunder-shocking realm. So he nodded knowingly. That's very good. The one from the Wang family of Beihai seemed to enter the thunder-shocking realm at your age. You're not worse than him. Li Tianlan smiled. He was still far from the invincible realm he expected. If he wanted to get to that point, he probably needed to go through 3 different stages. According to the 4 realms of martial arts, the difference of 3 small realms was almost equivalent to entering and exiting the thunder-shocking realm. Of course, this was just the so-called realm. The realm could explain a lot of things, but most of the time, the realm couldn't explain anything. What's your next plan? Zhou Yuanshan clinked glasses with Li Tianlan. The Maotai on the table was gone. So he opened another bottle without hesitation. Let's graduate first. Now the dark world is a bit chaotic. Let's take one step at a time. Li Tianlan drank the wine and said casually, Why don't you go to the military? Zhou Yuanshan suggested calmly, Father-in-law is now the actual number 1 in the military headquarters. If you develop in the military headquarters, it's much better than fighting in the dark world. And your strength is almost there. The Border Control Corps may be a good place. At least it's suitable for you. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and then said softly, It's not good to go to the Border Control Corps now. Dongqing Wudi jumped from the Border Control Corps, which was known as a small military headquarters, to the actual number 1 in the entire Zhongzhou State military. Now, although he still served as the commander of the Border Control Corps, this position with real power had actually become the focus of attention of all the major groups. The giant group was also inclined to use this position to make deals with other groups. It was not that this position could not be kept, but it could be used to make deals to get greater benefits. If he kept this position, even if the new commander of the Border Control Corps was still a member of the giant group, Dongqing Wudi would become very passive in Yuzhou, and some of the backbone figures of the giant group would also be affected. For example, Zhou Yuanshan in front of him. There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to go, you can go at any time. At worst, you'll be a deputy commander of some army. The Border Control Corps has always been the foundation of the Dongqing clan. Isn't it easy to arrange someone? Zhou Yuanshan said indifferently. But that's not in the interest. Li Tianlan looked into his eyes. It may also affect brother-in-law. Zhou Yuanshan paused and looked at Li Tianlan in surprise. It seemed that he did not expect Li Tianlan to see through it so thoroughly. Then he shook his head. It's just 2 years later. I have an advantage in age. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm the son-in-law of the Dongqing clan. We're on the same side. I'm not willing to use 2 years to change your path. How can I be your brother-in-law? Li Tianlan shook his head with a smile and offered a toast to Zhou Yuanshan. The military is not suitable for me. Zhou Yuanshan frowned and said nothing. Li Tianlan was not pedantic. When the Special Warfare Group and the Wang family of Beihai blocked the living space of the Special Warfare System, he also knew that it was a good choice to go to the military and the Border Control Corps. But whether Li Tianlan, who carried the glory of the Li family, was willing to do so or not, he could not afford to owe the Dongqing clan a favor. His relationship with the Dongqing clan could not be concealed from everyone. Once Li Tianlan went to the Border Control Corps, the Dongqing clan would signal to everyone that they were unwilling to give up the Border Control Corps. This would block the way of too many people. The first to bear the brunt was Zhou Yuanshan. Zhou Yuanshan was the son-in-law of the Dongqing clan, but more importantly, he was the heir of the Zhou family of the giant group. The Zhou family was also a giant family of the giant group. His father, Zhou Mulin, was now a director of the decision-making committee of Zhongzhou State. Although his real power was not particularly prominent, he ranked above Dongqing Wudi among the giants. It was precisely because Zhou Mulin's position was too high that Zhou Yuanshan's advancement in recent years had been somewhat slow in order to avoid suspicion. However, Zhou Mulin would retire in a few years. His retirement was bound to be exchanged for Zhou Yuanshan's advancement in power. This was the rule, the so-called balance. Therefore, the few years before Zhou Mulin's retirement were critical. If the giant group used the Border Control Corps as a bargaining chip to trade with other groups, Zhou Yuanshan would definitely have a share of the benefits. He was now the top leader of the provincial capital of Zhongyuan. If he went one step further, he would be qualified to directly serve as the governor of a province. If the giant group handed over the Border Control Corps, Zhou Mulin's advancement would be easily accepted by all parties. In this way, when Zhou Mulin retired, even if Zhou Yuanshan couldn't rush into the decision-making committee, he could at least really take charge of a province and lay the most solid foundation. But if Li Tianlan went to the Border Control Corps, and the giant group refused to trade, it would be difficult for Zhou Yuanshan to move first. In this way, when Zhou Mulin retired, Zhou Yuanshan would move. The top leader and the second in command of a province seemed to be of the same level. But in fact, in the eyes of the higher-ups, the weight was completely different. To exaggerate, whether Li Tianlan went to the Border Control Corps or not directly affected the highest point of Zhou Yuanshan's future career. It was not as simple as a matter of a few years. Moreover, the Special Warfare Group had been in charge of the army headquarters for a long time. This time, their flagman Qi Baitsong retired, and the Special Warfare Group also gained a lot of benefits from it, which made it even stronger. After Dongqing Wudi took over, he had a very difficult time. The giant group also urgently needed to exchange the 550,000 troops of the Border Control Corps for a large number of bargaining chips, so that Dongqing Wudi could establish his authority in Yuzhou. Whether Li Tianlan went to the Border Control Corps or not would even affect the future of the giant group. Li Tianlan really couldn't afford to owe such a favor. If he followed the Dongqing clan's intention to enter the military, that was equivalent to the Dongqing clan directly standing on the opposite side of Kunlun City, and the Wang family of Beihai, with no room for buffer. His success or failure in the future would also directly determine the rise and fall of the Dongqing clan, and even the entire giant group. Although there were no superiors of the invincible realm in this kind of top wealthy family, they had a deep foundation and developed relationships. Their direct support was even more important than the support of the entire Sai city, and could affect the overall situation. For the first time, Li Tianlan felt so important. But he would rather not be so important. Li Tianlan shook his head and whispered, "I'd still like to develop in the special warfare system. This is the battlefield that suits me best." It was the battlefield. It was the battlefield that suited his development, not the soil. Even if he was the only one on the battlefield to face the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City, it was the most suitable for him. Li Tianlan's eyes were calm. Zhou Yuanshan saw the light shining under the calmness in his eyes. That was the light of absolute confidence. He couldn't figure out why a young man who had just entered the thunder-shocking realm could be so confident. P.S. It's a plot familiar to the old readers again. I don't think it's boring. After all, the special warfare is different from the old books. The special warfare has a high force value, but it's still a city after all. The world view is so big. There is no alien world, no ascension, just the Earth. You're tuning into the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.